Dropping it now.
Excellent. Right. So
Boom.
welcome. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're an idiot. You should be watching live on twitch.tv/endercasts, where you could be subscribing and helping him earn a living.
True.
So you should do
But
that.
also you guys should
Anyway,
shout out your own channels because like that could be useful too.
I mean, yeah. You can also check out twitch.tv/imfrosk. You can sub over to her as well. She does a lot of great analytical breakdown content, and she streams a lot with Medic. Don't watch when she streams with Ender. You can also check out my Twitch channel, Vedius Official.
That's
I
the one.
Streamed in so long, I forgot.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Don't go there; you'll be disappointed.
Yeah, you will. Anyway, as I mentioned earlier, today we're going to be talking about the LEC teams at Worlds, and let's jump right into it. Unless any of you have an intro you want to say.
No, but I can see why you're not invited to Euphoria much.
Yeah, I'm just straight into it. Anyway. Mad Lions, play-ins. How do we feel? Let's start by talking about the Mad Lions. Obviously, they didn't end the split on a high note.
Well, first and foremost, do you want me to take over this?
No,
questioning?
I'm good.
Okay, that's fine. You're doing a great job. Really putting in that work, that hustle.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Just confirming. So obviously, the teams that went into plans are TL, Mad Lions, LGD, and PSG. Those are the favorites. Yeah.
So it's almost like we have
there's
two
a lot
Europeans.
of debate. A lot of people.
I know that people think the unicorns of love are strong, but just in like general, those are the theoretical favorites.
Yeah, it's on paper they're the pool 1 teams, therefore by default they are the favorites. Yes,
and only 2 teams exit from each group.
Yeah. So here I can TLDR how the system works. Okay. So you have 2 groups of 5 teams in play-ins. They all play a single round robin.
Yep.
After those 4 games, the number 1 seed moves on to groups, and the number 5 seed is eliminated. Then the 2 and 3 seed in Group A play each other in a best of 5. Loser gone. Same thing happens. Oh, sorry, 3 and 4. Correct. 3 and 4. Loser is gone. Same thing happens between the teams in Group B. Then the remaining seed, the low seed from Group A plays the number 2 from Group B, and the inverse on the other side there too. So two teams from each group go on.
So if we were to open Leaguepedia right now, and if we took the standings as they currently are, INTZ from Group A would qualify, Mad Lions and Supermassive would play a best of 5, and then the winner of that best of 5 would play against PSG Talon, and then the winner of that best of 5 would qualify for groups.
Wow, so I see we've somehow rigged the system, so there's no conceivable way that Team Liquid don't make groups. We've given them so many second chances.
As long as you get first or second seed, you should be fine.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's actually, it's funny because the first 4 games I feel like matter so much in this new system. Because literally it's the different, like either you're immediately auto-qualifying with first seed, or you're playing either a 3rd or 4th place team to move on if you get 2nd place. So it's like,
aren't tiebreakers actually quite likely though? Because lots of teams in theory could go 2-2.
No, because there will always be because you only play each team once, so you'll never have it'll never be even head to head. So there's always head to head to separate. So unless there's like a 3-way tie or something, then you're totally clear.
I see. Fair.
Yeah.
So basically, the worst case scenario is, of course, if LGD don't come first in their group, and then they end up in that best of 5, and no team really probably wants to play LGD in a best of 5.
That's under the assumption that LGD are the strongest team in play-ins.
Yeah, under that assumption.
Which I don't think they are.
But... You don't?
Team Liquid.
Yes. No, I think that Mad Lions are stronger than LGD at their height.
Okay, so let's talk about the Mad Lions then, because when outside of Europe, the perception of Mad Lions seems to be very negative. A lot of people are not very enthusiastic about them. A couple of other regional experts that I've spoken to obviously weren't impressed with their series versus Rogue. And obviously from our perspective, we were like, well, this is the worst we've ever seen Shadow play in his entire career. Like, even on a bad day, this was worse than what that is for Shadow. So I imagine that we have slightly higher expectations, especially seeing as we know what their ceiling could be. So Frosk, why don't you lead us in the discussion? What are your thoughts on Mad and their group in play-ins and what they look like?
Okay, well, in their specific group, that I think that Mad Lions is easily the strongest team if we're theoretically looking at the teams appearing at their strongest. Now, obviously, like you just said, the conversation could be that Mad Lions come into this tournament and Shadow hasn't transferred into the new junglers very well. He just seemed to have quite a limited effective champion pool. It was kind of like Lee Sin or bust for a while there, and then he found the Lilia to kind of qualify Mad Lions into Worlds. Humanoid's also been down on a slump, as has Carzzy. Carzzy himself coming out and saying that he's not having a great split. But Mad Lions at their best were a team that were just smacking everyone in the LEC and looked like G2 when G2 were in form. So I think there's respect there. Now, obviously, they could have gone into quarantine and sitting in quarantine and playing from hotels and under all of the new stress and being burnt out. They could absolutely take the stage and play like garbage and then just get like dumpstered on because it's a very young squad with not a lot of experience that have never been put in a situation like this before and then not be able to take out. The reason why I'll assume that they're playing at the best and I have them as kind of the best team sitting in play-ins is because LGD, I think, are just kind of getting this benefit of the doubt of being the LPL seed. And so people are like, oh, yes, that's going to be the scary one. And they do have really good players. Peanut and Xie in particular are kind of like the primary carries. If those names sound familiar to you, it would be because Peanut used to be that Korean jungler that played for SKT for a brief window and was shitting on everyone. And Xie was World Elite's mid laner. Xie is known as an Annie and a Diana and a Twisted Fate player. Obviously, now he can play everything, and he's been in the LPL for a while, and I would consider him kind of like the next generation of mid lane talent. He'd be kind of like in the same class as probably like not Nuke Duck. He's kind of between Nuke Duck and Caps now in terms of kind of like where he came over. He's been around for a while. He's not a new face, but he doesn't have that much international like exposure compared.
Bear in mind, like, not Nuke Duck current level, right? Because current level Nuke Duck ain't so pretty.
No, I'm not saying in terms of level. I'm saying in terms of like
tenure.
His like, yeah, there you go. His status of how long he's been playing.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people like they see LPL players' names and like, oh, I've never heard of this guy. He must be brand new. It's like, no, Xie has been around for a very long time, actually.
Also, didn't Xie play? Xie played against SKT TSM. And Peanut at 2017 MSI because I ref those games. Yep. No big deal.
But LGD usually exploit and use their 2v2 mid jungle. Then they have a pretty strong, solid top laner. Longji he played for RNG and Suning. He's kind of a big up and coming, but the LPL is stacked with so many top laners that while I do think that he's one of the better ones, it's just like, get in line, buddy. You're behind a long list of really talented top laners. He can play weak side, he can play strong side, he can play carries, he can play whatever you want. The issue is that they're bot lane. Now, Kramer also will be familiar to LCK fans, and Kramer is a good team fighting AD carry. He does fine in lane, but this is not a superstar bot lane by any means, and especially in the LPL, which I think right now has weaker bot lanes than it historically has had in the past, which again isn't saying that LPL bot lanes are shit. It's just saying that they're not as good as they once were. And that's of course because a lot of talent has left and a lot of new talent is coming in and it hasn't quite developed to the same extent as like the Names and the Defs and the Uzis. Like Jackie Love's still there, but I never considered Jackie Love as being as good in the prime as some of those other big historic names. And LGD's bot lane shouldn't get away with what they did against Carzzy and Kaiser, especially for the creative way that they play. And I think stylistically, if LGD abuse Mad Lions, let's say theoretically in a best of 5 between them, it's because Xie and Peanut get the better and exploit Humanoid and Shadow. Whereas I think for Mad Lions, Carzzy and Kaiser can exploit LGD's bot lane.
But there's almost no way that LGD play against Mad Lions in play-ins.
No, probably not.
Because
so this is the thing, right? Because so my biggest concern is so play-in starts next Friday, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I believe the quarantine for all the pros ends sometime this weekend.
2 days, 3 days.
It's something like that. So I can't remember what day they flew out, but it like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, something like that. It ends, and then the play-ins teams basically go straight into playing almost immediately. So my concern for Mad Lions is how much the quarantine affects them. And like, so Frosk gave us a lot of info on like Mad Lions and OGD ended. Like, what are your thoughts on Mad Lions and how do you think they're gonna do?
I mean, I think that Mad Lions, like we were talking about, like Kaiser. I think Kaiser is actually like the big carry on this team, and the amount of influence he can create on the map. And I think that that's where they stack up best internationally. If you look at in any role, and it should be no surprise, Kaiser was our best performing support in the summer split. I am concerned about Shadow, obviously you mentioned, but also like our soul laners and how they end up stacking up. Not as much in the play-ins, but you know, assuming they move on to groups, which I mean, obviously it will. Guys, come on, let's be real. I think that their soul lanes can be very exploited the later we get in the tournament, especially if Shadow is not performing very well, because I think the way that Humanoid plays around mid is very, very punishable. If Shadow's not having a great day and the second he falls apart, then that's going to carry into jungle really well. So for Mad Lions, I feel like what Kaiser can come up with in the bot lane, because keep in mind, coming into summer split, like Mad Lions had a lot of time to prep and come up with, you know, the Wukong in the bot lane and those sorts of things, and they've now had about a month since LEC ended, and the patches haven't been like super revolutionary. I feel like they've been relatively tame. So my hope is that Mad Lions, with some extra time, find some of that creativity that was so successful for them early in the LEC summer, whereas like the later we got in that split, the less and less it seemed we saw of it.
So my biggest concern for Mad Lions comes from communication and shot calling. So I think when we talked to Mad Lions a lot during the regular season, they had a very healthy draft strategy and they had a very clear plan. And it felt like that when Humanoid could just focus on playing, that was when he played the best. Remember, he was in our conversation for who's the best performing mid laner, and it was between him and Larson. And for a long time, like for the first half of the split, I think we were all pretty convinced that like Humanoid was the front runner, especially seeing as I believe Mad Lions even beat Rogue in the first half pretty convincingly, from what I remember as well. So, but the problem is,
that was the Larson Echo game though. That was like a weird draft.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
Sure.
Because I also feel like I did feel like Humanoid had a really good first half of the split, but for me, I've always seen like the weaknesses in his play, like playing side lanes, getting over aggressive, like throwing leads, and
sure.
That's something that like it's always going to be in the back of my mind.
So my main point is that I think that what shifted for Mad Lions was that Humanoid didn't have to be the shot caller, right? So I'm going to make a quick comparison. When Hans Summer, he joined a team, I forget which one it was, but his responsibility was to be the shot caller on that team. And he couldn't be very good as an AD carry and shot caller at the same time. And I think it was one of the problems that him and Ignar used to have. I forget which team, and I apologize if it's the wrong one.
Misfits?
But one of the big advantages of putting him with Vander was that he could just be an AD carry, and Vander could take a lot of that responsibility away from him. Now, we know that a lot of the Mad Lions players are young, but I know that one of the issues that Humanoid suffered with was he had to take initially a lot of the shot calling responsibilities. And then this split, they moved them away so that he could just focus on his play. And that's where I think we got to see a lot of the good Humanoid play. But then something happened and he then started taking those responsibilities back on. So if he does, that is where I find that Humanoid in lane gets punished a lot more, because he's not focusing on him as a player and how he coordinates with Shadow. And I don't know the communication structure perfectly in that roster, but I think that they need to find an effective method of basically enabling Humanoid to play at his peak, because we know he can, right? Yeah. Like we saw him last year playing up against Duenby in FPX, and like he had some fantastic games. So I think that like communication is a big one for me, and that's why I'm so worried about this team after quarantine. You go straight from quarantine into playing in the play-ins, and I'm like, I just hope that whatever issues they had towards the end of the split don't persist, and that they can sort out their communication. They come in with comfortable drafts, and we can see a strong-looking Mad Lions in the play-ins.
Yeah, I think that's also a really big thing. Personally, and maybe other teams take a different strategy. I would prefer that teams, especially in the group stage, when it's kind of like that round robin, that you just prioritize comfortable drafts. You figure out what the meta is, you're playing to what the tournament meta is going to be, and there's not a ton of experimentation. I think the only time you have to reach for experimentation in group stage is when you're vastly outclassed in a pound for pound talent perspective, like a Gigabyte Marine situation, and you're like, I gotta get Nocturne to level 6 at 30 seconds into this game and start blitzing down into the bot lane and pull out like some cheese like that. And I just don't want to see a situation where, because Mad Lions have their coaching staff has so much familiarity with a lot of the not ERL wildcard teams, that they don't try to like bend themselves over backwards in draft, or let certain mistakes happen because they're trying to ban out the other team based on their preparation, versus just playing comfort and just playing to the meta and throwing a consistent performance to secure the first place seed. Like, start getting crazy and start denying the other team when you get into best of 5 stage. But I don't think groups is where you want to do that.
I agree with that.
You're basically arguing that, like, on paper, mechanics-wise, understanding of the game, MAD should actually just have such a good foundation that you don't need to win through a super crazy draft. You can pick standard, you can just beat people in lane, on the map, and everything else like that.
Yep, as long as you have a good enough read on the meta and you don't lose because you're behind meta and an inferior team in terms of their fundamentals, their mechanical play, is able to abuse you in the draft phase.
Okay.
Yeah. And I feel like I have a lot of faith in the Mad Lions coaching staff to be able to do that. Like the coaching staff is the thing I'm least concerned about. It's more like, again, 4 rookie players that have never been to Worlds before. Humanoid was there last year, and that was his first year too. So, like, again, with like the whole new situation and quarantine and everything, I just feel like there's a lot of questions to be answered. And 4 games is not a lot in like a play-in group stage there to really test it. Like, there's no doubt they're going to win their best of 5s, at least in my mind. But I would not be surprised to see them like lose some random, like really random games in that first round robin.
So,
we have to talk about TL versus Matt. That's what everyone wants to hear about.
Going to say, I was literally going to say, Frosk, you gave us some wonderful opinions on TSM not too long ago in the Rogue versus TSM debate. So I will now give you the opportunity to...
Is there a copy pasta for that? I feel like I've seen it quoted from time to time.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to be as aggressive. Obviously, the context
Rogue's
was a
in
little
chat
bit different back then. But I will say that... you know, what do you think? Mad Lions versus TL. Have you actually watched much TL yet? Because I'm not on NA yet.
No, I'm about to answer your question in that I've watched more NA Academy than I have LCS this split, and I haven't completed they're literally the last region that I'm doing for preparation for Worlds. I was working on LCK and LPL this week. So if you guys, I will say this, and I'll give credit to Ender before I hand this over to him. Ender and I had breakfast this morning, and you brought up that really great narrative. And I know like people hate narrative, like we'll get to the analysis in a second, but like it is a really cool storyline that Shadow is like came in as Broxa left, and now you have this cool battle where you had like the Lee Sin guy from Fnatic, and now like the new up and coming Lee Sin guy, and then you have like Carzzy and Tactical, the 2 brand new AD carries fighting.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because like these 2 teams are so similar, I feel like, in their story. Like, TL was first place in regular season. Mad Lions were 1 game away from it. You know, Rogue shit on them, just, you know, dropping that because Rogue are watching and Mad Lions aren't. But then, like, they both fell off in playoffs and, like, sort of, like, skated into Worlds. But then, like, you have, like, rookies looking at former world champions in the top lane and support. You have Tactical and his journey that I feel like somewhat parallels Carzzy, where Tactical replaced Double Lift, and then Carzzy, of course, replaced Kabe, like 2, like, very long-standing, really good AD carries in their regions. But then, yeah, the Lee Sin story is a good one, because Broxa was, like, the Mr. Lee Sin for the last couple of years in Europe, and now, like, all year it's been, you gotta ban Shadow's Lee Sin, otherwise you're gonna get dumpstered. And I feel like, yeah, go ahead.
No, also in kind of like the storytelling of this game, and this might be like pushing it a little bit, but it is interesting to me that, okay, Brox is on Fnatic. Fnatic go to World Finals. He then says like, I want to win. I'm no longer on Fnatic. If you're going to win domestically, you either have to be on G2 or you have to be on Fnatic. There's no other option. And Kabe was in a very similar position where you're like, okay, if I can't get on one of these 2 teams, then is it better to be on a 3rd place LEC team, or is it better to go to North America and try to get on the best North American team, continue to win championships, and then try to push at Worlds? And
the best part about that, though, is the irony of joining TL and TSM, and then neither of them can do it.
I know, that's what's funny. But what's interesting to me is that Mad Lions are kind of like that other answer, or they were for a brief, you know, moment in time where they were just surging past everyone. And I wonder if there's like a timeline, because I always love this idea of like, you know, if small changes in history, what could have been, if like players like Kabe and Broxa, and if they look back across the ocean at like EU and what their life could have been like if they had decided to stay, and you see a team like Mad Lions and Broxa was like, I thought I had to be on Fnatic and G2 to win. I could have tried to be on that team.
Yeah.
Just like little things like that. So, you know, if Mad Lions just come out and like dumpster TL, and specifically if like Brox is exploited, like that hurts. That's not even like Fnatic and G2 taking a shit on you. That's like the dudes that you haven't even met yet that basically just like came in and erased your name from history.
So I think there's a lot of interesting things about Mad Lions. So the first thing is, how would we feel if we lost to TL? How would Europe feel? No, I mean, like, we'd be upset.
I mean, as really biased
sucked, right?
casters, yeah, we'd be probably crying and
no, but I mean, I'm thinking of like from a European
No, I'll be
perspective now,
really, really honest. So I was doing a VOD review maybe like a week and a half ago of Immortals versus TSM. Not like the highest quality of gameplay, but Immortals did end up winning that game. I think it was week 5. And I was so furious with just the level of play and decision making from both teams. And I'm not trying to like go hard flame right now because EU teams make plenty of mistakes as well. Sure. But I just thought the types of mistakes that were being made, people picking fights when they didn't have the proper items to pick the fights, when they didn't have key summoner spells, like TSM decided to take a dragon fight when Doublelift was on Aphelios and didn't have flash against a composition that outzoned him and outranged him off of item power spikes. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what? And that happened all the time. And I'm just like, this is wild to me. And then they get massive gold leads off of it because people make mechanical mistakes or they win and then they don't learn anything. They're not punished for the bad habits that they have. And that's why I think North America comes into Worlds and gets blitzed because finally their bad habits are really exposed by teams that will consistently punish them. Most of the time, it is the Korean and Chinese teams and not necessarily the European teams. Although I think in this instance, because of how hungry the Mad Lions are to skirmish and to fight and how well they do team fight, some of those really bad habits around team fights that I've seen in some of the brief examples of watching North America, but seem to keep coming up. I'm like, oh no, that's not going to feel good.
Yeah, and I mean, so I will say as well, like, I've spoken to a few people about the North American teams, and like the sentiment from many analysts is that like North America doesn't look the strongest. But what I thought was really interesting was I saw people rating Mad Lions higher than TSM, which is like just a really interesting thought to me, because especially when you look at it in the context of like best of ones and when you kind of match up like pound for pound talent, it's like I think it's actually a much harder argument to make than simply just like, well, Europe better than NA, you know, like I don't know. I think that while I don't believe that North America is sending someone that's like gonna upset and surprise. I think there's a world where like I wouldn't be shocked if in a best of one TL beat Mad Lions, right? And my question to you two is like, would you be surprised if they lost in a best of one?
I wouldn't be surprised if anyone loses in a best of one.
Like Mad Lions especially, and like so. The one thing about NA is like it feels like the 3 teams they've sent are all like very close in skill level. Like if you watch playoffs, like TSM, like all their series went to 5 games. So at least my read of Mad Lions versus Team Liquid is, or sorry, you said people rating them over TSM. It's the same thing. Is I feel like Mad Lions' peak and what we saw of them like early on in the split could beat any of those teams. But I do feel like it is very wishful thinking that they return to that level. And because I don't know. I feel like Shadow's play has just been way too inconsistent for me. So yeah, Mad Lions could beat any of those teams on any given day. But I don't think, like if I'm coming in and rating them, like what do I think will happen? I actually don't think Mad Lions would be able to consistently take down a TSM.
That's fair. Okay. All right. So when we look at like other Plains teams, we obviously know that Frosk, and I don't think Frosk's opinion is isolated in this. I think that North Americans not coming in as the favorites, and I think that if you speak to many North American analysts, they're like, I liked Azael when he was talking on the dive about he was very confident that TL would make it out of play-ins. And I think that's a fair confidence to have, because I think that North America has shown over the years that they always, like the 3rd seed has always pretty convincingly, and well, okay, there was the TSM GAM. Yeah, I remember that. But generally North America makes it into the World's group stages pretty convincing. And like, we've got to remember that G2 Esports also went to 5 games against Supermassive, I think it was. back in 2018 in play-ins as well. So, like, in light of that, are there any play-in teams that either of you are worried about in Group A that might be able to upset the apple cart? Maybe it be a TL or a Mad upset that could create some chaos.
Have no idea. Haven't watched enough of them to.
Goes fair.
Sorry, I just quickly banned the wrong people in chat. So, what was the question?
I'm sorry. Of the teams, I mean, it's fine if you haven't done all the preps on playing teams yet, but like, do you? Because in Group A, play-ins, Mad Lions, Team Liquid, I think the general consensus is those two are the favorite teams to make it out of the group. But do you think there's any other team that could potentially upset and make things crazy?
Oh God, I have to open.
You have Cacao and Zeitnot and Snowflower all on Supermassive.
True, actually.
Yeah. But I've heard a lot of positive things about INTZ. I've heard that they're actually pretty good.
I don't know. I feel like I hear like, oh, this team's actually pretty good.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
like,
we hear
I hear that all the
yeah.
time. It's like, yeah, they play quite well in their region. I have no doubt they've got like some things down, but then you watch their games and it's always a lot.
All
of the
I'm gonna
same
say
story.
is by sheer name caliber of just like what your name can buy you. Supermassive, you hover over that, you're like, huh. So that's where that guy ended up.
Yeah. I mean, Zeitnot's always been good on the international stage, right? Like,
Yes, and
Zeitnot's
Snowflower
always-
and Cacao.
Yeah.
But
That
it's
bot lane we
always
always
team
talk
play.
about.
Like the consistent thing with play-ins team is like they'll win their regions based on like individual talent, like almost like always. And then you come to international stage and they just do not impress in team play macro. The only team that's impressed me recently was last year's Unicorns of Love that went 5 games against Splice and almost made it to groups.
Yeah?
Like that team was legit, and watching that team, like I still remember prepping with you and Frosk back when we used to get to go to the office, and like we were like, look at this play, look at this, like look how they fought over this dragon. Like they were actually legit.
Gadget and Santa's.
And Pineapple.
Nanosick. Oh.
All right, well, Unicorns...
my absolute favorite thing is that we've done international wildcard like so many years now, and you just keep seeing the same names. So even if you don't like heavy prep for them, you just start to like recognize the players and their play styles. And every single time it comes to play-ins year, and like all the casters roll up their sleeves to get ready to prep, and they're like, Pineapple. I remember when he did X, Y, and Z, and you're like, Gadget, Heimerdinger, yes.
Yeah. Honestly, so the only situation in which I'm scared for Mad Lions is they drop 2 games in the round robin, and then they're in like the 3rd, 4th spot, and then they end up going against the 2nd place Unicorns from Group B. Like that's probably the only situation that I'm like.
Then it's like who can fuck up draft harder.
Yeah, exactly.
Unicorns come flying in, and they're just like, I hear you like to play Pantheon bot.
Yeah. It literally just comes down to like whether or not.
But basically, what we're
int
saying
their
is that all the teams and plans, we think Unicorns could be that team.
I have no idea.
I mean, that's fair. It's absolutely fine to not have a strong opinion.
Still working on my plans prep. As a hobby, because who knows if I'm casting or not.
Guys, stop asking.
Stop asking. Just a hobby. This whole show's just a hobby.
It's just a hobby.
But I do like unicorns.
All right. Okay. So under the assumption that we have Mad Lions qualify through, I pretty much, regardless of who else comes with them, they have to go into Group D because we already have 3 EU teams in the group stages. So seeing as we're on the topic of Mad Lions, they'd be put into the group of Top Esports, FlyQuest, and Dragon X.
You're on Group C, Ender.
No, it's on a slideshow right now where we were talking about everything. Now I'm gonna put it on Group
he's slideshowing it.
Look, see how great that is?
Yeah. Okay. So under the assumption that we have all 4 teams in the group stages, I'm going to let Ender start. What do you think Mad Lions' chances are out of 100% of making it top 2 in this group?
At the risk of sounding unbiased.
Okay.
10%.
10%? Okay, Frosk, what percentage are you giving it?
I don't think it's as low as 10. Ooh, maybe. Okay, here's my question, Ender. Do FlyQuest have a higher or slower chance of making it out of groups?
All the same.
Equal. Because I think at this point, it's not do one of those teams overperform, it's do one of the other 2 teams underperform.
Right.
That's my theory.
Okay. I mean, I'm inclined to agree with that. I think having watched a lot of top now, I think they're really insane. So I could see a world where like a
Listen,
Fnatic, a
everyone's
G2,
looking
or
at
maybe
LCK and they're like, can we take them down still?
yeah. So again, if what I would say is if Rogue and DRX are in the same group together, yeah, I'll give you that. I think Rogue have the ability in best of ones to be able to take games off of DRX. I think they have that potential. But right now, based on what we've seen from Mad, I think it's very difficult to make that argument. And bear in mind, even in a Rogue versus DRX, I don't think I would put Rogue as the favorite. I just think
Listen,
there's a world in which Rogue can beat DRX.
if Chovy is playing another Camille mid and he happens to end up 0-4, I think
But it's really fascinating because I don't want to talk too much about the other regions because there's going to be like so much other content that's
because we only care about Europe.
Yeah, because we do only care about Europe. That's the truth. Sorry, chat. But like, I'm really surprised that people have this opinion of DRX that they should like that they only win through Chovy. Because like, I understand.
I don't think that's true at all.
Yeah, I don't think that's true at all. Like, Chovy's really insane. Okay, chat, trust me, he's like really good. And I'm sure you guys all agree with me because Chovy's MVP of Worlds already. It's been decided.
And the Dottie Award goes to.
But like, I think Carrier is really insane. I think Pioshik, while being a very young player, has also showcased a lot. And I think that
say it again.
Pioshik.
Yeah, but now say it without saying shit at the end.
Well, I didn't say that. Yeah.
All right, nice bias, Vedi.
Hey. God damn it, Ender. Jesus. Anyway, I think DRX, just like most top LCK teams, they're like very precise. And I think that with a really good draft, it's very difficult to beat this team because they're so good at recognizing their win conditions. Yeah. They know how to execute upon their champions. And something that I was talking about with Yamato earlier, and like I'm really interested to get your guys' thoughts on this as well, is that I believe the LCK teams, when they have a winning draft, know exactly how to operate it. But when they have a draft that's like at a slight deficit, they, unlike LPL teams specifically, but sometimes like EU teams, they will not take risks in order to like make up for that draft advantage. And I don't want to get into that whole conversation that Ender had with Gyoda where it's like, what is it to take a risk, right? What I mean by that is
who got the last laugh?
Like I can use the example from game one when Genji, they had a Twisted Fate, they had a Nidalee, they had a Volibear top, and they had a Senna Nautilus bot lane. So typically when you're running Twisted Fate, right, you don't really want to play through a Senna Naut bot lane, but you can, right? Because it's like, it's not an easy lane to snowball, especially when you're playing against an Ashe Thresh, but it's possible. And the only times you actually saw Twisted Fate roam was when Genji was actually punishing a mistake rather than making that proactive play. And I think that if you have a Mad Lions on that comp, even if it's not optimal and they're in a quote unquote losing draft situation, they'll just go for those plays anyway, because they're like, okay, we kind of have to get our bot lane ahead or we have to put their bot lane behind. Otherwise, we're just going to lose anyway. And like, that's a thing that I'm still kind of like figuring out if I fully buy into that idea. But this idea of precision from the LCK team is very strong in my mind, where when they have a goal and a task that they need to do, they're very good at achieving it. And that's why I have so much respect still for DRX.
When we had LS on Euphoria, which it's a really good episode, people should go back and watch it, there was a conversation that we had with him about DRX, and that while the team is exciting and fun to watch, he didn't rate them as highly as some of the other LCK opponents because he felt like a lot of their wins were coming through their ability to kind of like brute force against opponents rather than play like a thought out style, and that when they met opponents of a similar caliber in terms of talent and they wouldn't be able to skill check people and it did come down into draft phase, that then they would slip down.
Right.
And I think that's kind of like the flag, and ultimately like where DRX ended up, I think meant that his assessment of the team was correct.
Yeah.
So if that's a conversation against like if we take that and we put it against TES, then I'm like, okay, you're probably not going to pound for pound talent just completely blow out them. And then it's a question of, can they do that to FlyQuest and can they do that to Mad? Yeah. And I think that's what will be answered very quickly with the DRX, because frankly, I can't rank LCK teams very well. It's like a conversation of, Ender, we were having it when we were watching their VODs of
It was
Damwon,
DRX
wasn't it?
Damwon, I think we were watching.
It's almost like there's a handshake mentality in the LCK that, like you're saying, where everyone's like, our comp is strong right now, your comp is not strong right now, and everyone has agreed that that's exactly how it's going to play, and so they'll trade different sides of the map. Whereas if the team is
in the LEC, we always fight for third dragon. We always fight third dragon. We always fight Herald. Like that's what
exactly. And like the thing is that means that against teams like Mad Lions specifically, I don't know so much about FlyQuest, but also TES, that the LCK teams could be like, okay, yes, our composition is stronger. We're going to walk to the dragon. And then TES and Mad Lions, just because of the nature of those teams, would be like, what the fuck are you looking at right now? And like the LCK teams are like, they can't fight right now. Like, what are they thinking? But like the handshake doesn't exist in other regions. And suddenly the LCK team's like, what are these guys doing?
And this is actually, like, we were talking about this, and I think one of the really key things for me is how the meta shakes out at Worlds. Because I do think a part of this is that in Europe, we're very hesitant to move into range support champions. Whereas in like LCK and even the LPL, there's a lot of range supports that get played. So there's a lot of situations where LEC teams will have a support player like Kaiser go roam and make something happen and constantly look to take advantage of having a ranged initiator or having an initiator in the bot lane that other regions don't necessarily have. So depending on whether or not people like Kaiser still feel like they can play these champions even as like more ranged supports get picked up against them, then we'll like see LEC teams continue this style where they go for the 8-minute Herald swap and they fight you there, and then they try to fight you at a dragon as well, and that can catch an LCK team off guard.
But that's the clarifying point, because I see that people in chat are saying like, yeah, but in that situation, the LCK are still at an advantage because that's a team that's fighting off of their power spike. So theoretically, the LCK would already be stronger. But what Ender just said there, catch a team off guard. When LPL, like the generalized idea about their styles, when LPL were just like coming out and blitzing kids, they usually do fight very well on power spikes. Like the LPL has always been very good at recognizing when they're strong and then when to pull the trigger, but they attack you in setup. And that's what we're talking about. So either like the LCK will go through and they like double down and punish, and they snowball really effectively. And because they know how to pilot their win conditions so well, they just basically like as soon as they get a lead, they run and they rip the game away. Or they a team is trying to pull something illegal, it catches the LCK off guard, and then suddenly they're kind of like sucker punched or slapped in the face. So it'll go like one or two ways. Like a team will try to do something really aggressive, and then the LCK will be like, that's illegal, and slap you, and then just like run away with the game. Or they'll get caught out in their setups and then have to play like shoot from the hip and not be able to skill match their opponents, and then games go back and forth.
So I think I have a slightly different opinion, but at the same time, like I agree largely with what you're saying, because JDG is a team that like we'll talk more about later, but I think
JDG is so good.
JDG is a team that's very good at taking advantage of your assumptions and then attacking you within those windows. And like we'll talk more about that later, but what I think is really fascinating, and like I understand this is kind of moved into a slightly broader conversation about LCK teams and like the LCK in general, because I think it's really important for us as European fans, because obviously we're always compared to the LCK. And in recent history, we've been able to one-up the LCK.
Let's go, EU! Let's go! Pat yourself on the back. We did it as a team.
We,
I feel like the
it was G2. What was it? Yeah, because it was G2 that constantly took down SKT, and they did it back-to-back. They did it semifinals MSI, semifinals Worlds, and then obviously we didn't get this MSI. But one of the big things I think that's like been an interesting topic for the LCK in recent history is that they've always had talent. Like when the top 20 lists come out in the near future, you're going to see a lot of LCK players on them, because LCK has never had an issue when it comes to individual talent. Issues have always come with things like drafting, things like having to trap. Like there have been all these other things that aren't quite as like tangible or easy to hold on to.
Taking 2 years to adapt to a changing game.
Well, I mean, but like when we think back to last year, all 3 Korean teams finished first in their groups. Only one made it out. What was the biggest criticism of Damwon versus G2? They could only play one thing. Like their bot lane could only play Kai'Sa, right? And like they couldn't properly, like their mid laner was constantly on things that didn't match up well. Game 4, where G2 went with the Yasuo into Kayle mid, and they played Ryze into Aurelia top, and they perma roamed top and killed Noguri over and over and over again. Like, And then Griffin versus IG, it was draft. Like, it's just one of those things that keeps coming up in conversations when you look at these LCK teams in best of fives. It's like, why don't they adapt? What are they why are they so rigid in their style? Like, what is this? But they've never really seemed to struggle in the best of ones, because that's where their playstyle, where you can rely on individual talent, where a lot of teams
and
just
fundamentals.
Fundamentals. You can pick safe drafts, which is just like very standard, easy to execute. I remember the meta right now is also very straightforward. It's not complicated. You want to try and get priority in your lanes. You usually have a carry jungler. Dragons are going to be point of contention, whether it be the first 2 or 3 and 4, whatever it is. Dragons are going to be fought for, and like, it's very easy to draft for that, you know? So Ashe, Ornn, I'm good to go. I've got a solid comp. Like, and I think that LCK coming into this, depending on what the meta looks like, could look very good. But that's, I think, something that's constantly been brought up about the LCK in the last few years, and why they haven't been able to perform as well as teams like G2, who, you know, one of their biggest things has been defying the meta, going for things that don't make sense, the Pike top, the all kinds of crazy stuff that they've been able to come out with. The Syndra bot as well, they brought out multiple times. Like, so I think that's a really interesting angle. I'm thinking a lot about the LCK teams coming into this world.
So I'm wondering, does that make you, like, if we come back to Mad Lions now, does that make you more or less confident in Mad Lions? Because if you're saying
significantly less.
Exactly, right? Because it's like, okay, if we look a little bit broadly, you could say, like, the way Rogue plays, hey Rogue, I see you in chat, way Rogue plays is a little bit more straightforward, right?
Exactly.
Fighting around objectives, playing off of item timers,
and
Mad Lions
are really
lost to that. So now, if you go take that and say, okay, first, second place seed from the LCK, like, I start to get nervous for Mad.
Yeah, and that's why I think I'm kind of in line with your 10%. I'd even be willing to say like 5%. Like, I'm not super optimistic about Mad in group stages. They're a rookie team. I think that depending on how they handle quarantine, depending on how play-ins goes, maybe they get the play-ins buff, you know? Maybe that happens. We've seen so many teams get that play-ins buff and then surprise everyone, and maybe DRX end up choking, right? It's a world that could happen.
But the thing...
we can't bet on it.
The play-ins buff for me is them figuring out the jungle meta and figuring out answers and tools for Shadow. Because when Shadow looks comfortable and when he looks confident, this is a completely different team, because Humanoid doesn't have to work so hard, especially if he still has to carry the responsibility and burden of doing a lot of the shot calling for the team. So, like, play-ins buff, when we say that, what we basically mean is, like, does Shadow have at least 4 junglers? Does he look confident on all of them?
So, any final thoughts on Mad Lions, Ender?
No, we're good.
All right, so
next,
TLDR chat, we're not super hype on Mad Lions right now.
Look, Mad Lions are going to be very successful in play-ins, okay?
Yeah.
they're going to win more best of fives than...
But think about this, like,
I'm not gonna go there.
Maybe they get, like, also a huge confidence boost. Like, they just start Goomba stomping on kids and play-ins, and then they come into groups and they're like, let's go.
I'll tell you right now, though, if Mad Lions finish above DRX in that group, that I think is like an insane achievement. Insane.
Oh yeah, absolutely. To go your first year, and not only do you make it to Worlds, but you make it out of groups, you're like, we've already eclipsed North America.
Yeah.
Also, I wasn't going to say it now. I was going to say FPX, okay? By the way, another fun little story here is Humanoid being the only returning player from the Splice roster that made Worlds last year. How cool is it that he lost Vizichachi, Xerxes, Kabe, and Tor? He lost like 4 people that have been playing our league for forever, and then gets 4 rookies and makes it back. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. And he's going to go up against another very well-known and hyped LPL mid laner. So, yeah, let's see how he does against Knight. That's going to be an interesting one. I feel like Doonby and Knight are a little different, though. We'll see. Anyway, so let's move on to Group C, the group that everyone cares about. I know Rogue cares about Group B. We'll get to that in a second. But Group C is the TSM.
This is hilarious because I don't care about Group C. I love Group B, but I can understand why people care about Group C.
Because everyone wants Fnatic TSM. They want you to do the copy pasta. That's literally why they hate Frosk.
At TSM, you're lucky that Rogue's not in the group.
Yeah.
True.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, okay. So when we get to Rogue, I have a very spicy thing for you both. But that's all more foreshadowing. Let's focus in. Let's talk about Fnatic first, end of the split. Frosk, what are your overall thoughts and impressions of Fnatic right now coming towards?
Fnatic were having an identity crisis. The good thing is that they kind of stabilized what they wanted to play, which wasn't entirely new. We'd seen glimpses of it. In fact, I think that Reckless went on interview and said it was the game against Excel that Fnatic decided how they wanted to play, which was going back to the carry.
The best part,
style.
he said it in a PGL with Cadril talking to him, just right in front of Cadril.
Cadril for the boost. They play carry self-made, and the big thing was the Evelynn pick, which meant that the Lucian pick for Nemesis was super important because it allowed Nemesis, Lemon Nemesis, the Sour King, to be super safe in lane because you have a ton of dominance with Lucian, as well as the mobility for the champion to pretty much always have push priority, have an AD threat, so you can mix your damage profile between your AP from Evelynn and your AD from Lucian, and kind of do his own thing onto a side lane. I think Nemesis and Fnatic are performing best when he doesn't have a core responsibility to the team in terms of like he has to be the one to zone or he has to be the one to do X, Y, and Z. If you can just kind of leave him to his own devices, like he's a good player. So just like leave him alone. Don't necessarily really count on him. Have self-made farm up. And that was the style that they ran with all the way to the finals, where unfortunately they ran into G2 and got 3 out.
Don't forget they beat G2 3-2 in the round 2. No, I think you're exactly right there. I think for Fnatic, what I hope is that they can figure out another way to get, because like the Evelynn comp with Lucian mid is beautiful. We know that works so well for them, and I need to see them be able to replicate that success or that like identity with multiple different compositions and multiple different drafts, because we saw it was like very easy for G2 to be like, yes, just remove the Lucian, yes, remove the Evelynn, now what does he do? Like it's a lot harder for Fnatic to put the pieces together. So I'm hoping that with a few weeks leading into Worlds, they're able to find more options and like build comps around a Lilia or a Hecarim as well.
So they already stole Lucian Evelynn from JDG.
Yes,
why not keep the trend going? Nidalee, Twisted Fate, already very prominent and
very
relevant in the meta. You can also run Syndra Graves, also very prominent in the meta, very effective mid-jungle duo. So I think that there are actually plenty of champions that Nemesis can play. And what I found really fascinating was that over in the LPL, they had 0 Azir in their playoffs. Actually, I think they had 5 overall throughout playoffs, but among like the top teams, like no Azir, right? That wasn't a thing. What they always prioritized was blind pick Zoe, blind pick TF, blind pick Lucian. These were their like mid lane trios. And I think sometimes you would see a Syndra come out, especially from Knight, as it is one of his champions, right? And so my only concern for Nemesis is the fact that we don't really see any Zoes from him. But the other 3 actually fit straight into his wheelhouse. And so as long as the mid lane meta doesn't change a huge amount, I actually think he's chilling.
The biggest concern is the wave management for the rest of Fnatic, particularly Bwipo, especially against a lot of the top laners at this tournament. Because like you're saying, like if you're playing for self-made and you're playing for your jungle, you're playing for your jungle to get better reset timers on his camps. He is not playing when your wave gets pushed away from you and he needs to come up and break a freeze, give away his position, and then stop farming. And unfortunately, Fnatic tend, like, it's harder because everyone has to play for the jungle, and even when the jungler's not in that lane, your laners can mess everything up or like put themselves at a massive disadvantage. So that's always what my concern is for Fnatic and trying to play this play style at, the world-class tournament where teams theoretically should be able to punish that when you make that type of mistake.
Yeah, and I mean, so I will say, obviously, we've been a bit of a like mixed bag here for Fnatic. The one thing I will say is I still think Reckless is world-class. I think that the 2v2 bot lane is insanely talented, and of all the bot lanes that we're sending to the World Championship, this is the one that I am the least concerned of.
This is the best bot lane that we're sending to World.
Yeah. So I think that...
but you guys would rate Hans Vander very high too, yeah?
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay,
they would be my second best bot lane.
Cool. Gotcha. Yeah. I agree with you guys. I was just like, I feel like they're also very high up there.
Yeah. Cool. But Reckless Illusang, I have a huge amount of confidence. Obviously, a lot of people love to be like Hilly int, and it's just like... But the amount of things that Hilly does for that team, I think is sometimes very difficult to
Fnatic don't work without Hilly.
Yeah,
they don't work without him.
It's often very difficult to notice, especially as a caster when you're casting his games, because like Hilly does a lot, and sometimes he does a lot of questionable things. Don't get me wrong, he does. But he also does like a lot of very insanely talented things, and he works very well with self-made. I think is one of the biggest things.
Real quickly,
the biggest thing for go Ender.
Yeah, because I just wanted to say Yamato Cannon dropped some really good insight. He said, okay, the reason why Rogue is a superior team to JDG and Damwon is because they actually have a brain and they compete in a competitive region. The thing is that Rogue came first in the LEC. LEC has, I'm going to say, 10 better teams than anything we've seen in the LPL and LCK.
Okay.
But continue your point, thanks.
So the thing that I want to say about Hilly specifically is we just kind of talked about how wave management is really important when Fnatic are playing their style of prioritizing self-mates, pathing his farm, his reset timers, and funneling gold into him. Hilly is really good at wave management. He's really good at messing up your resets. He'll almost always hold the wave for Reckless. Every single time you look at the Fnatic bot lane, outside of their Ashe series and playoffs, they're always freezing on you. They're always getting cheater recalls off so they can be really comfortable to freeze on you. And then as soon as Reckless has the wave frozen, he's so good at playing weak side as an ADC. Hilly is gone. He is sprinting top lane. He is sprinting with his jungler. He is going into the mid lane. But he, first of all, sets up the wave. He's always cutting waves. He's freezing waves. He's destroying your resets. He's always making sure that Reckless gets a good reset. And Fnatic do not work without him. So say what you will about Hilly, and what he does is really, really crucial.
Yeah, you also need players like Hilly and Bwipo I put in the camp too for Fnatic, especially if Selfmade is playing champions like Evelynn or Hecarim. You need people that will, actually pull the trigger in fights, because we actually saw so much, especially on the Hecarim. Like if Selfmade, or we saw it from Inspired too, if they're on the sole initiator, the fight is just gigadude. Like there's no way they're winning that fight because Hecarim goes like 200 miles an hour and is super isolated from the rest of his team. So I actually think it's important for those players to be on playmakers. I also want to say that what Vedi earlier said, steal more strats, more comps from JDG. I want them to steal like in-game strats too, because like I was watching JDG and I was super impressed how they were playing with their Evelynn, and like they just got like solo farm in side lanes for their Evelynn, and it was just crazy. I'm like, wait a second, like you top can roam bot lane and basically take on the ganking duties, and then jungler goes farm tops, gets solo kill top, starts farming top lane too. So I remember that. Yeah, I want to see. Yeah, exactly. I want to see more of this, because it's something that we knew like back when like Karthus was getting played in jungle, and you'd pick like Ornn mid lane, which is something Nemesis did. Like Karthus would full clear jungle and then just like drive by mid lane and take a wave. It's like, okay, like actually go harder on the self-made carry strat. Like start using other players like Bwipo, who want to get out of top lane anyways. He loves to roam on champions like Ornn, Camille too. So like go let him do that, and then self-made, invade enemy topside jungle, take camps, take EXP as well.
So I think that like there are obviously pros and cons to Fnatic, and ultimately the Fnatic week 2 buff is inevitable. So if Fnatic go 2-1 in week 1, then they've already won the group, is what we know for sure. But now we kind of have to look at them relative to the rest of their group. And I think that depending on who you speak to, will give you a different opinion. Some people say that this is an insanely close group. In my opinion, this is a top-heavy group. I think that JNG and Fnatic are quite clear favorites, in my opinion. And one of my big debates is how big is the gap between Fnatic and Gen G? Now, of course, different people will say that first seed TSM, like they can compete with second seed of Europe and a third seed of LCK. And then, of course, a lot of people are kind of giving benefit of the doubt to the LPL, and they're saying, well, back-to-back world champions, different teams, which is the craziest thing, because it just goes to show the level of depth of talent that the LPL has. And LGD should just be among one of the many that is considered a big threat. So I personally think LGD is a little overhyped. I think definitely a good team for all intents and purposes. But as we kind of discussed earlier in the play-ins, there are various reasons as to why, like, I think they're a little bit more comparable to Mad Lions. Like, not necessarily in the way that they play, but in terms of the level that they're bringing to this competition. And I think that TSM, the problem for TSM is it was a very chaotic final, and all of their series were chaotic, because I think all of their series went to 5 games, except for the one that they lost.
Except the one against the Golden Guardians.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was that the first one that they lost?
That was the first, initially? Yeah. They insta-lost and they ended up beating them later.
So, like, there's a clear level of inconsistency that we've been seeing from TSM. The fact that they had to fight their way tooth and nail, like, showed there was clear no gap between them and anyone else. And now they're being put into a best of one scenario where you're against a legendary organization in the form of Fnatic, who, from Europe's perspective,
just hit me with the narrative. Just
yeah.
legendary.
Yeah,
Oh,
the narrative here. And then you've got Genji as well, of course, former Samsung, like former world champions.
Two world champions in this group.
Yeah.
Yes.
But also, Genji, many people believe should have been the second seed coming out from the LCK as well. And for anyone that's watched them play, like, I think Ruler has an argument to be made that he's currently the best AD carry on the planet.
So good. Genji looked like a completely different team though when Ruler gets like a lead and just gets to fuck it. Oh, sorry, I keep cursing. Just gets to fiddlesticksing run away with a game.
This
like,
really is just euphoria.
Genji are like, let's go.
Yeah, like, did you guys watch game 1 of DRX versus Genji?
I
We have
watched
not-
all of their playoffs.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I don't
like the
remember that.
pentakill that Ruler got in game 1 on Senna was just stupid. I was just like, okay, Ruler, I get it. You've lost the game anyway, but okay, fine, cool.
My favorite thing is when Clid, like, when the game is just clearly over and there's nothing that Clid can do to like pull it back, he's just like, let's try anyway. And he just starts like throwing his face into things. He's coming up on the side on Lee Sin, and he's like, my champion's completely irrelevant, but god damn it, I'm gonna try. And you're just like, oh, Clid.
So yeah, I think that Genji is obviously a very good team, and if they had swapped with DRX, I think a lot of people would be like, oh, okay, DRX winnable, maybe. Yeah. So relative to the rest of the group, I gave a lot of my thoughts. I think that there's a world in which Fnatic can actually come first in this group, depending on which one shows up.
There's actually only one thing Fnatic have to do, and it's not even Fnatic. It's just Nemesis. Okay. Find a Zillion counter. And it's one. It works against TSM. It works against Genji. It's free.
It's true. Does anything count as Zillion, Ender?
Lucian.
Does it count as Zillion?
Yeah, you
We'll
can
both
dash
count as
out of
Zillion.
you can dash out of Lucian's or dash out of Zillion's garbage, and then Lucian's also an auto attacker. So
why don't we just ban
Zillion
Zillion,
ult
and that way
sucks.
Whipple can't play it either? Like, I think.
Yeah, but then he's gonna lock in Rengar. Like, what would you rather have? 0-10 Rengar or 0-10 Zillion?
Yeah, I'm taking the Rengar.
I take the
Thank you very much.
Zillion.
Oh,
No!
you obviously take the
Bring other
Zillion.
people back to
more
life.
Oh my god.
No.
Okay, in seriousness, what I think is interesting about this group is this is like the ultimate proving grounds for North America.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
this is literally the moment where they could like shatter everything and be like, no, screw you, you're cool, screw you, like, and bust out.
Do you
So,
remember the?
That's what's hype about this group.
Do you remember the last China Worlds there in 2017? It was
Yeah.
Misfits, WE. Was it Flash Wolves? Or
In
was
their
it?
group?
There was. Yeah. I swear
Are
it
you
was Flash
which
Wolves.
one are you talking about?
The Misfits one. The one where Misfits
With
won the
SK Team
tiebreaker.
Misfits?
No. It was, but in the group was TSM, Misfits, WE. I'm pretty sure it was WE, and
They
it was
were-
Flash Wolves.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of people thought that WE and Flash Wolves would make it out of that group, and then Flash Wolves went 1-5, and I think that they were the team that beat TSM, and then it was Misfits that lost to WE twice, whereas TSM actually beat WE once.
I remember that one.
And it was like all these random things happened where it looked like it was certain for TSM to get out of that group. And then they ended up playing the tiebreaker against Misfits because they were 1-1, I think. And then they lost the tiebreaker. And it was all because of Flash Wolves at the end of the day, because Flash Wolves beat TSM.
So you're telling me that TSM would have knocked SKT out in quarters?
Yes.
Yes.
Damn.
But it's
We were-
always like that for TSM in groups. Do you remember the 2014, the one with SK? Like, they were originally slated to come first in that group, and then they lost to SK Gaming.
Okay,
because-
let's be clear though. They didn't have their jungler for half the tournament.
Yeah, but my point is that, like, SK got their jungler back in the second half, and then they lost to SK, and then they ended up finishing second, and I think they got Samsung White in quarterfinals.
They took a
where they
game off
blew up
Samsung
Rotary.
White, and they should have had two. That's my
Yeah.
rant over. I used to be an NA fan anyway.
But like one of the problems with TSM seems to always be just like that lack of consistency. Like you get different TSM showing up on different. But like I also think that's a very fair representation of what we saw from them in the playoffs, where like you seem to get different TSMs from game to game. The fact that they couldn't quite get like, even if it was just a 3-1, right? Often when a team is clearly better, it's not surprising to drop a game because like a bad draft or like a bad execution. But the fact that all of their games were so insanely close, I think like consistency is going to be one of the biggest issues for TSM coming into this tournament.
You mean it's because they have inconsistent fundamentals and then they need to rely on the star power of the roster, such as the MVP performance of Bjergsen?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Weird.
It's actually
good luck doing that at Worlds.
No, but it's interesting because I feel like we had this conversation last year with the NA teams where like TL obviously won, but we all expected C9 was the team that would perform better.
Because of how they approach the game.
Yeah, because of how they approach the game. And it's like TL beat C9 regionally, or they did at least in the past because they just had the better players. But
yeah,
the teams with the better fundamentals are the ones that are actually going to perform consistently over a World Tournament. But I just don't feel like I'm seeing that.
Which group was C9 in last year?
G2, Griffin, and some other team.
Oh, right. Yeah. It was rough for NA last year. It was rough.
Yeah. Dude, it was almost rough for G2.
It was really rough for G2.
Yeah, you guys say that. Do you not remember the clutch game versus Fnatic? The 50-minute one?
Yes.
The one with Huni Gang.
It was really sketch.
I was
so
that,
sketch.
Yeah. I remember being so stressed out because if Clutch won that, then Fnatic's chances were pretty much doomed. And then they just stomp SKT. And I'm like, wait.
It was so weird, honestly.
Groups is so much fun. It's like my favorite part of Worlds. I don't even care about knockouts. Groups is so fun.
No, the best is like the second week of groups when every team plays like all their games on the same day.
Oh, that is because
last year G2 came in 3-0, I think, right? And then just like lost all their games or something.
And then just
insane.
ran it down.
Yeah,
they went 2-1. They did go 2-1.
No, they didn't. They lost to C9, surely.
No, they didn't. They lost to Griffin.
And C9. C9 dumpstered them. No?
No, dude. They 2-0'd C9.
Okay, wait. Before you guys get off topic, who makes that out of the group?
Fnatic, Gen.G.
This group, in my opinion, the heavy favorites are Gen.G and Fnatic.
Yeah.
What's the percentage?
What? Okay, so I think the percentage chance of Gen.G making it out are...
We don't care about that. We care about Fnatic.
Yeah, but I've got to put this in context. I think that Gen.G's percentage of getting out of this group is higher than Fnatic just because I know what Fnatic is like in best of ones. Like, they're way less consistent than a Gen.G is, which is why if I was to order them, I think it's Gen.G, Fnatic, and then it's a toss-up. I think it's unfair to say that TSM is worse than LGD, but right now, TSM don't provide us with a huge amount of evidence to suggest that they're coming in looking super strong in this.
I mean, I don't think that LGD have the best fundamentals either. They really rely on a very specific champion pool for Peanut. Although I think the Peanut set jungle was actually pretty good as well. But it's obviously like the Nidalee as the big pick for him and more aggressive junglers. But you know, they take skirmishes and they can do stupid shit, and you just have to come prepared to fight them. If TSM and Fnatic come prepared to fight LGD and to take those skirmishes, then I think you can take down LGD. I think if you just like let them do what they want, and then you just have to face Kramer as like a team fighting AD carry in the back half, and you just get rolled on by Peanut and Shie in the early game, then you're gonna have a bad time.
Yep.
Yeah, I just don't see how TSM overcome jungle gap in this group.
Shen jungle, baby.
I mean, Shen jungle is gonna get banned.
Peanut's gonna just he's coming to crack some skulls.
Yeah, and it's also like I don't feel like Bjergsen will like dumpster lanes and be able to like help out jungle in some way. Like I think bot lane is gonna be rough. Because I think Fnatic's and Gen.G's bot lanes are both stronger than TSM's, and then I just don't think you can stop Selfmade from becoming a monster.
We don't want to hate.
We really stop Selfmade from becoming a monster.
I think what's important for us as well is like
I meant speak.
I don't know about you two, but I would love it if TSM did get out of this group. Like I think it would be fantastic.
Because
ideally, if TSM make it into knockouts, that's a banger series.
Yeah,
that's a series everyone wants.
Ideally, not at the cost of Fnatic, but
I'd be willing to sacrifice.
You'd be willing to sacrifice Fnatic? Okay, I'll sacrifice Fnatic if Rogue made it out of that group. Deal.
Rogue, you heard it here first.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because then we get Rogue versus TS.
Versus
yes.
TSM. Yeah,
All
exactly.
right, let's go. Honestly, down with Fnatic.
Yeah.
Honestly, Fnatic, sorry guys, you gotta take the L on this one.
This is a TSM
People want
podcast
it.
now.
This
Sponsored by Snapdragon.
is
Bit of an old one there.
All right. Back on topic. Yeah. So like, basically, Fnatic, we think that their chances are pretty good. I think there's a real world in which they can get out of the group. I know the like.
I'm less high on Fnatic in this group than Vedius is, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that odds-wise, I think Gen G is going to come higher than Fnatic is, but I don't see a world where Fnatic loses to LGD based on what I've seen from LGD.
I think that this is like the true group of death, and that this is like, if teams do not come prepared to fight LGD, that there's like a chance that LGD come into this group, not only escape, but also just like mess people up here. And that this one's going to come down to like the stupid tiebreakers and the stupid head-to-heads.
Because I think it's fair to say that out of all the play-ins, seems like LGD is probably the most likely to like cause an upset, you know?
Because also some of them, like Fnatic, their most important player is Selfmade, and Peanut and Shie are really, really good together. So stylistically, like depending on what Fnatic's like, if they're on form, if their draft is prepared, but which historically their drafts have just been an absolute mess. And in this group, I don't think you can afford to be as inconsistent as Fnatic have been in the past. Now, that said, they've also been in a group with SKT and RNG and still popped out of that group somehow. So who knows? For some reason, they always seem to get it done. But I just, there's a real world where Peanut just comes in and messes Selfmade up.
Yeah, like, and again, like I agree. I think that Fnatic's inconsistency is something to be worried about, and that's my biggest stress.
Can't be inconsistent in this. Oh,
I know. I agree. That's what's stressful, Frosk.
But so, do you guys
Fnatic
feel like?
Game.
Question. Do you feel like Fnatic is inconsistent, or do you feel like they're streaky?
No, I think they're one-dimensional.
I think.
Okay. Yeah. That's true. So, like, for example, like I think some of their players are inconsistent, sure, but I feel like if Fnatic like figure it out, like once they figured out like, oh, we can actually play scaling junglers like this, you know, like the Lucian mid works, like once they get their set formula, and this has been like a historic thing for Fnatic too, like they work with that and they work with that well. So I'm actually not feeling like they're gonna be like, I don't know, like turbo smurfing one game and then inting the next. I don't know.
It always comes down to the same criticisms that I would have of like you know, like a Bjergsen having to like brute force a performance to make up for his team's inconsistent fundamentals is kind of the same complaints that I have against Fnatic. They're one-dimensional in their play style, and then they're also inconsistent in their individual performance. And when Fnatic are at their best, when they face G2 usually, it's like very much shooting from the hip, being very reactionary, the individual creative thoughts and plays of the players, of like constantly grabbing tempo back, constantly pushing tempo forward, being like constantly making you make decisions. And that doesn't seem to be the best or work out like as well as it does in EU when you're against higher caliber teams. You know, like you're no longer against mid-tier LEC teams or bot-tier LEC teams. You're against like the best teams in the world. And so just like how Fnatic always falls short when they're trying to beat G2, obviously they have beat them now in a best of 5. But again, you see that where Fnatic fall down onto, okay, guys, it's time to go wild. Like they're fighting, we're TPing, get the back door. I got a split second. We're going for the Elder. We're going back to, it's never like a calm. When was the last time you saw Fnatic beat G2 in like a, okay, here's our win conditions. Okay, yes, we're playing it perfectly. We're going to walk very calmly to the bed. And like against top teams, like that is really difficult to do because they're just as good at making those types of decisions and those maneuvers, which is why it's never going to be a consistent way to like secure. I don't know. But that's also why they're really scary for me.
So the funny thing is, I think Ender hit the nail on the head for me when he said, you know, finding that formula and what like calling them streaky, because the reason why they've had so much success in week 2 is because they've said like, okay, the reality is it seems like that, and I think the Fnatic players have said this themselves, where all the players are not always on the same page, right? You put like a G2 group together and all of those players have a very similar idea of how to approach the game and they just kind of fit together like a puzzle, right? Fnatic don't have that natural kind of synergy with each other. Arguably, they had it more when they had Broxer, but when you introduce Selfmade, you have all these different pieces that don't quite fit together just yet. And so you need to find some kind of formula that works very well. And they found it in spring, and they looked very strong. And they look exceptionally strong when they do find the formula. And that's why I think week 2 is always so good for them, because by the time week 2 rolls around, they're like, okay, this is trash. We don't want to do this anymore. Let's just do this. And I'm pretty sure if we just stick to this, we'll be fine. Lo and behold, they do that, and then they smash even some of the best teams in the world, right? And that's the thing about Fnatic. What do they look like coming into week 1? If they finish week 1 2-1, that is a very good sign for Fnatic. But yeah, it very much comes down to preparation.
Yeah,
There's a lot of question marks, and we didn't even talk about like, how do they handle quarantine? How do they handle living in China?
But I also feel like that applies to every team. So I don't,
except the LPL teams.
That's okay. Yeah. Okay, whatever, dude. Whatever. What I was gonna say is, great news for Fnatic is, it doesn't seem like the meta is drastically changing. There have been a couple scrim leaks. We're seeing Evelynn. We're seeing Lucian. Like,
it's true.
And like, Fnatic found the form and copied the form of all the other regions.
We're never going to see Fnatic get those champions.
No doubt.
Isn't
but
that
like,
great? Imagine if you just have to ban Evelynn every game versus Selfmade. Like, do you have to ban Evelynn against every other jungler in this group? Are we worried about Klid's Evelynn? Are we worried about Speaker's Evelynn? Like, I would be a little worried about Peanut's Evelynn, sure, but like, the fact that you have to ban that against Fnatic, that's already a draft advantage, right? So I think it could play in their favor, depending. Anyway, we talked a lot about Group C. Let's hear percentages, percentage chance that Fnatic make it out of the group, Frosk.
I actually think there's almost like a... It's not correct to say a 50-50 chance that anyone makes it out of this group, but I actually believe it won't be as top heavy as you think it will be. I think that this is actually like a really tight race, and it's just like who has a better read on the meta and who's more consistent with their fundamentals. I'll say Fnatic have like I'll say 40% chance of getting out.
Okay. Ender?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm somewhere in the middle ground between you two, where like I still feel like it will be Fnatic and Gen G, but this is not a group where anyone like 6-0s. Like, I definitely see like LGG getting up a couple wins. It's like 4-2, 4-2, 3-3, like those types of scores. I would see coming through more likely, which then the doubt comes in is, well, if you get sniped by LGD twice, or you get sniped by LGD and TSM once, then like that actually really dooms your chances. So this is one where you actually have to keep your focus the whole time. Yeah, Fnatic, don't fuck up week 1. Don't mess up week 1.
What's your percentage? Percentage out of 100 that they get out of groups?
Fnatic will get out of groups 60%.
All right, cool. I'm at 75%. I have a lot of faith in Fnatic and in this group.
100%. 100% is what I... Sorry, there's something in my throat.
No, I'm really optimistic for Fnatic. I think that they'll come in really strong. I don't think that they're favorites to top the group, but I think that they're quite comfortable when it comes to getting out of the group. I think there's a world in which they can get out, but I'm definitely more on the Fnatic faithful side.
I feel like if they're not on the same page, that Bwipo and Hilly are going to try to fight.
We all agree, but we have faith.
Frosk, what you're saying, Frosk, you're landing on the side of you expect Fnatic to not be on the good side, whereas I'm expecting Fnatic to be on the good side.
Okay, if Fnatic are playing their best, yes, they 100% get out of this group.
And that's what I'm saying, right? Like, what side of the coin are you landing on? Are you landing on the Hilly inside or the Hilly...
Flip the D2. Flip the D2.
Yeah.
Frost,
that's what I'm saying. Like, every point that you two have made, I 100% agree with.
Yeah.
And there's a world in which I could easily see Fnatic not getting out of this group. I'm not trying to argue that. I'm just saying that I believe Fnatic is more likely to end on the side that they will come in well prepared, they will understand the meta, they will have a good plan for week 1, and I think that they will make it out of the group. And I don't mind if I'm wrong. Well, I will be mind if I'm wrong.
I just think that Fnatic are running with a completely brand new coaching staff. This is the first time that Mithy will be an acting coach at a world championship. That Fnatic
You're a negative Nancy. We know
that Fnatic
had
Fnatic. Yeah,
Fnatic
I hate
hater right here.
As I literally defend Hilly and Reckless to the ends of the earth and put Selfmade on my all-pro, I hate Fnatic.
Frosk. You're gonna need to memorize this one. I just came up with this, so I hope you like it.
Okay.
Hillisang, god of the bot lane. Flip this D2 coin and put shame on, or put LPL. Oh fuck! I messed up. Put the LPL to shame. Put the LPL to shame. That's what it was. There we go. Sorry, might be. It was close.
bot lane and shame don't really rhyme.
They're close enough.
Hilly,
L
god
L
of
L
the lane.
bot lane.
Flip this coin and grant me your
Brain.
Surely it's hilly, god of pike. Bring
Yeah?
it unto misery and
Uh,
play around your power spike. I don't know. Anyway, moving on.
All right,
Group
we're gonna
C,
quit
that's
that.
it, chat. We're going on to Group B, the supposed group of death, and by that we mean the death of JDG and Damwon. Good luck. You ain't getting out of this.
We
one.
have 2 EU teams, Pog.
Here's the thing. So the reason why I think Group B is hype AF, because I know a lot of people are high on TES. I get it. Top esports, they're really good. I'm so hype on JDG. I actually think the 2 world's favorites are in this group with Damwon and JDG. Like, that's why I love this group so much.
Yeah, Rogue as well. Yeah, there's Rogue.
Yeah,
JDG,
and Rogue,
Damwon,
exactly.
the 3
Thank you.
world's favorites. I agree.
And
so
PSG.
the spicy opinion. I was talking about this with Yamato, I think, yesterday. On a tier list, if you guys had to rate from 1 to 10, right? Would you put Rogue above or below Fnatic?
What do you mean?
For this World Championship, would you rate Rogue as a stronger team than Fnatic? Yes or no?
But Rogue's in chat, Vedius.
Yeah, you can be honest.
No, I think Fnatic are a stronger team.
Yeah,
you think?
I agree, Fnatic.
Rogue and I.
Oh yeah,
Yamato
convenient. You're talking up with Rogue, and they
Are
think
we
they're better.
talking about the best versions of both teams?
I'm talking about coming into this World Championship. Who
No,
do I
that
have
is
to-
very
No,
good.
no,
Fnatic.
no,
Like,
no, no, no,
Frosk,
no,
you're
no,
also
no,
really
no,
good
no,
about
no,
Fnatic. And I was
Wait,
like,
wait,
yeah,
wait, wait,
No. You don't get to have it both ways, Vedius. You
These are
go
two
get to have
separate
faith in
conversations.
Fnatic and then be like, oh, but I didn't mean the top end of the team.
Wait,
Rogue is clearly better.
If okay,
Check
okay. At the
PayPal.
end of our split, guys, at the end of our split, if Rogue and Fnatic had played a best of 5, who would have won that best of 5?
Fnatic.
I think Rogue would have won that best of 5.
They did.
It would have been a rematch,
Right.
obviously, after the 3-0 that Fnatic handed to Rogue.
Yes.
But I think Rogue would have won that best of 5 against Fnatic if they had played again.
Nah.
I would have to really go back and like really think about it.
So like Yamato's in my train of thinking as well. Yamato and I agree. So like basically the main reason for
Why don't you invite him
is
on the
just-
show?
I mean, because
Finish your
he's a
point.
busy-
I'm sorry.
He's a busy man, he's a little too cool for us. Didn't want to say it, but so basically, I think that Rogue right now have all the best pieces in order to succeed the most in this meta, right? And so one of the things that I think Fnatic ultimately lack is a strong mid jungle duo, which we saw work so effectively for Rogue when they played against G2 to the point in which Larson was even beating Caps in lane some of the games, right? And so I think that when you have such a strong mid jungle duo with such a strong foundation in the bot lane as well, along with how the meta plays out, along with like a lot of team fighting, being very objective focused, and with the good fundamental understanding that Rogue have and the consistency that they provide, if you were to like look at a tier list and look at expectations, like that's what I think Rogue for me rates a little bit higher than Fnatic. It's easier for me to have confidence in Rogue than it is for me to have that same confidence in Fnatic. Does that make sense?
I think that Rogue have a more consistent lane phase and a stronger early game. But I do not agree that if both teams are playing their absolute best, that Rogue are better team fighters and decision makers in late game on an open map than Fnatic.
Fair. Okay, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
Team fight is where I'm not exactly sure. Because I do feel like, it's so hard. Because I'm like, Larson is much better at like recognizing the space he can influence than like Nemesis, who's porting into backlines on Twisted Fate.
To me, let's think about the champion pool that was really effective in our playoffs and top lane. It was a lot of Ornn, a lot of Gangplank, and Renekton that was kind of popping up.
Yeah.
And
Top lane's
Gangplank-
obviously the elephant in the room.
And
Shen as well.
Shen.
Yep.
And on those champions, Whippo is head and shoulders stronger.
Yes.
Yeah. I ain't disagreeing with that. I'm looking about this from the team perspective. I cannot get this based on what I've seen and how they've played and how the meta is. Like, I'm just more in the camp that, to me, I just kind of have a little bit more faith in Rogue than I do in Fnatic. Now, I put this in isolation, right? Because I'll get into the context of the group as well. I'm looking purely from an EU perspective, comparing those two teams initially, right? The point that I want to try and get across is I think we can all agree that Rogue and Fnatic is actually quite close. Yes? Do you disagree with that?
Again, it depends like on what you're looking at out of these. I don't know. It's like really hard to have this conversation after the season's already ended, when it's like, how have they changed coming into Roofs? Like, are we going off of their top performance or literally what they just showed in the last week of playoffs?
Literally what they just showed, their most recent performance. That's why I based a lot of my opinions off the most recent, because we don't know how a team is going to change, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of just have to use the data that's in front of us, which is their most recent play.
I mean, frankly, if it's the most recent performance, Finn was having a really abysmal playoffs. And like the top gap between Wunder and Finn, like almost single-handedly won the series against G2. And Whippo, outside of his Zillion game, was actually playing really well in playoffs.
Yeah,
and even the back half of the split, his Ornn performance was great. And the power that those champions can have, I think, can sway. Yes, Larson and Inspired were playing better together than Nemesis and Selfmade, but going into playoffs, Nemesis also massively stepped it up, and Selfmade was an absolute beast for majority of the split. Obviously had like a slightly downturn and then like went back up. And Han Sama and Vander, I think, are our second most powerful bot lane, because Carzzy is on a slump, whereas Kaiser is still performing. So like as a collective duo, but Reckless and Hilly, I still would say, are probably our best bot lane.
Sure. But now I'm asking, like, do you think the teams are close, or do you think the gap is very large?
I think depending draft, a gap can be really large.
Yeah, I would say it's not. I would not think it's a huge gap between the two teams.
Because in my opinion,
one of the big things for me with Fnatic is that I don't feel like Nemesis is a liability for the team anymore. And I have much more faith in Fnatic solo laners now to not like really cost their team games.
I mean, so the reason why I disagree with that is because Caps put Nemesis in the dirt in all 3 games in the final. Like, that he played both sides of the matchup and Caps won both of them.
Sure.
So I'm like, that argument, like, I would say that the Finn gap between the top laners was obviously much bigger than the gap between Caps and Nemesis. It's just that gap in particular. I just like, the reason why I bring this up is because I think that when we look at all the teams, we can see that there's a gap between TS, JDG, and then Suning, right? So the top 2 in LPL, and then 3, there's a gap.
Wait,
right?
Did Caps didn't actually beat Nemesis in all 3 games? Chat's got my back on this one. Chat's got me on this. You got okay. Finish your point though.
Wait. Okay, we can come back to that. Not in all 3. Okay,
we'll circle back.
Yeah, we can circle back to that. But like in the LPL, there's JDG, there's TES, and then there's a gap between them and Suning, right? In the LCS, it feels like all 3 teams are quite similar in level based on what we saw in playoffs. And then in the LCK, there's a gap between Damwon, and then there's Gen.G and then DRX. And you can decide how close you want to put Gen.G and DRX. It's up to you. But there's a gap between those. And then I think we can again all agree that there is a gap again between G2 and then Fnatic and Rogue. And like, the sentiment I have is that 2 and 3 in Europe is actually quite close, and that we're actually sending 3 very solid teams, even though those 2 are a bit obviously behind what G2 can do. And like, I was curious as to whether or not you 2 agreed with that sentiment.
I do agree with the sentiment that the gap has closed, where it used to be G2 and then a massive gap and then kind of everyone else. Whereas now I feel really confident sending the 4 teams that EU is sending, that all of them are quality teams.
Okay, interesting. But do you think that there's a big gap? Okay, interesting, you don't. But because that worries me then, because I think that there's such a big gap between TES and JDG, and then from Suning, like, it's very clearly easy for me to see 1 and 2 in LPL and then a 3. Whereas
I think that's where me and Frosk might disagree, though, because we're actually really up on JDG.
No, I said 1 and 2 and then 3.
Sorry. Yeah, gotcha. I thought you were saying the gap between 1 and 2. My bad.
No. I'm saying the gap between 1 and 2 is like non-existent.
Right,
They're pretty much at the same level, in my opinion. Like, I think we can all agree, just to get it out, favorites for this tournament are JDG, TES, and Damwon. Yes? No?
JDG TES Damwon? Yes.
I get what you're saying, but I don't know if I agree that that implies that Europe is weaker then, because then you're assuming that the ceiling is all the same. Because you could also you could flip that argument and be like, but Vedius, but if our third and fourth team are just as close to Fnatic and G2, then theoretically we're sending 4 amazing teams, whereas the LPL is only sending 2 because there's a massive, you know what I mean?
No, but the thing for me is it's easy for me to tell the difference between a very high level team and a good team because of that gap. Whereas to me, it feels like in Europe right now that there's not a huge gap between G2 and Fnatic and Rogue, which makes it harder for me to believe that we're sending a truly top team and that we're just sending a lot of good teams.
I just don't. So I do actually feel like there is a gap between G2 and the rest. They absolutely shit on Fnatic in the best of 5 in the finals. And I don't think any of us thought they played particularly well against, or they're much better than the showing they had against Rogue the day before. I don't know, yes, they look worse than last year, chat's saying that a lot, but I don't know. I still feel like this team is definitely our best team.
I mean, I would agree that I think G2 is by far the best team.
Okay. So bringing that all now back to this conversation, right? I understand it took a very long way around to get it, but I thought it was actually pretty interesting hearing your perspectives on the gap between Rogue and Fnatic. So looking at this group, obviously Rogue's in a very unfortunate situation where they're going up against 2 of the tournament favorites.
Yeah, they don't really get good practice against these teams because
they don't get So there's a lot of things that are going against Rogue, and the thing that I was most excited about for Rogue this world was because I think that things that we've already talked about is that they're incredibly consistent. They have a good understanding of the meta right now based on what we saw in playoffs. They have a strong carry jungler that works well with his mid laner. And they seem to have all of the building blocks, in my opinion, to actually find success. The problem is they're going up against JDG, who's just that but personified. They literally they do everything that Rogue does, but they also have one of, if not the best top laner on the planet.
Basically JDG are what Rogue want to become at one point.
So for those unfamiliar with JDG, they have Lumao and Zoom.
Gucci Mao.
Yeah. And these 2 players, in my opinion, are 2 of the actual best players in the world.
There's also the fact that Hansama and Vander. So Vander, I feel has been stuck on playing tank duty, not because he can't play anything else. And he is also very good at tanks, especially his Nautilus in particular. But because Finn is struggling to perform to a high enough level on champions that would have engage tools like the Ornn, and so it forces Vander into a position where he needs to be responsible for the engages. Lumao is not in that situation. This motherfucker, he will just start flying around on the Bard, and so I think one of Rogue's strongest things is that the kill pressure that they can exert on their 2v2. But if you are put into a position where Vander, and maybe we come in and Vander's champion pool changes up into more of the enchanters, but if Vander is on his Nautiluses, his Tahm Kenches, things like that, then you don't get to punish with Hansama as much as you would want to in lane and being hyper aggressive and having kill pressure there, unless you can have Larson or Inspired as the jungler coming down or the mid laner coming down for the CC setup that Vander is getting there, which is just really hard to do against Yagao, who's also a super heavy roam style playing mid laner, whereas Lamau will play an enchanter and then just abuse you. So you get to deny the 2v2 power of Hansama and Larson just based on the champion pool because Finn isn't able to play the hard engage and Vander has to do it.
Yeah, I feel like JDG, they have really strong players, obviously, but I think they might be playing the best map game in the world.
Bro,
now.
Yes, 100%.
They are actually just so insane,
and how everyone has converted to the church of JDG.
Yeah, honestly, Frosk was just
I think TS is the better team, but we can come to that.
Well, we can come to that. I don't. So basically, this is what happened because I don't follow LPL super avidly. I watch a bunch of their games, but I'm not studying the players. Oh my god, are these guys so good? Sure. And Frost was just hey, just saying, I don't think TS is maybe the best. You got to watch JDG, and I watched one game, and the way they played the map was just so pristine. They had really good plans, like moving players around, like always min-maxing farm, like very, very fluid game as well. And it was that type of like on-the-fly movement that I was like so hyped up on like some really great teams in the past.
It is the epitome of brain versus brawn, TES versus JDG. That is absolutely what it is. Yeah. TES have incredible individual players, and JDG are big brain, and each individual player is smart, and like that's what it comes down to. These games are always decided by draft. I'm super high on JDG. I want them to win so badly.
It's really fascinating.
No, we're supposed to be EU biased, Frost. Stop talking about it.
Yeah, Rogue. I'm really excited for Rogue.
Rogue is gonna have a great time.
So like, of course, now we're talking a huge amount about JDG, and like we obviously wanted to talk about the European perspective. So like JDG is good, Damwon is good. We don't need to go up into a huge amount of depth.
We do need to talk about Zoom and Nuguri versus Finn.
Yeah, so this is the thing, right? So when we look at Rogue, when like we've already talked about the foundations of what make them good and what make them a strong team. The biggest concern that we obviously have is in the top lane. Now, bright side. Let's get that bias cap on. Let's get the bias cap on. Nuguri has this thing called
he dies two times in lane at least every game.
Yeah,
but then solo.
So all you got to do is kill him once and then leave him be. If you don't kill him twice, he never gets the power spike. He never starts playing well. So if you only kill him once, Rogue, you'll be fine.
Here's what I don't understand. This guy, I watched him and I remember all of the hype. I remember his Klepto Vladimir, and then I watched him with Ender, and we were both like, what is he doing? This guy is actually running it down.
The insane thing.
You see him play team fights, especially on his Kennen, and you're like, oh my god. I've never seen a better team fighting top laner. What is that?
Because you know he's like legit when you watch him play. So then my question is, can he turn the int off? Because he is literally inting in lane. Like, I'm watching him play, I'm like, he knows he absolutely knows that he's losing this trade. There's no way, when I see the other things he's capable of, that he doesn't know that he's going to lose this fight, or it's going to be like a 50 HP difference. There's like absolutely no way he's not aware of that. So can he actually turn that off? Because if he can turn that off, then like, I'm just like, this team, like, where are you finding the holes in this?
He reminds me so much of the Shy.
Right?
It doesn't matter if the Shy is like 0-9. He still finds a way to make an impact in the game, and that's what's really impressive about him in the top lane. Is like, it doesn't matter how hard he ran it down in lane. Like, he will still find like the key fight, the key moment to have a massive impact and flip a game.
So here is where the problem comes for me with Rogue in this group. Is you look at Damwon, and they're a solid team all around, but their team fighting is so pristine. And something I've always thought about Rogue is they're a solid team all around, and their team fighting is really good. But I think Damwon is a stronger team fighting team than Rogue. And in that sense, I'm like, where do I find the edge for Rogue? And that doesn't look good. Then I'm like, Rogue generally a smart team, but then JDG is a smarter team. So I don't know what they're supposed to do.
Wait, but I also think JDG is the best team fighting team in the world.
Yes.
I actually think JDG is the best team fighting team.
They're so good.
Like, I don't know what Rogue's supposed to do here.
I was watching one of their series, and I forget whether it was against LGD or whether it was against TES, but there was a game where the lanes were just kind of neutral, and I was like, okay, they don't look that impressive. Like, they're kind of standard right now, you know? And then there was this one team fight where I was like, oh my god, how did they kill everyone? Like, the way they approach the objective, the way they're positioning, it's almost like they know not only what they're supposed to do, but what everyone else on their team is supposed to do, you know? And like, that might sound really simple and straightforward, but like, when Ender and I play together, I don't sit there and think like, what is Ender's job going to be in this game, and how should I play around what Ender's going to do?
That's why they're so good at comebacks.
Yeah, and like, it's the fact that you can sit there and I can be like, okay, I know Ender needs to dive onto the backline, which means that I'm not going to get peel from Ender. So I then need to play around my support. My support also knows this, so my support's going to cover me. And everyone's just in the right place at the right time. And that's why, like, as Frosk said, when you watch the final, TES get these huge advantages, and then it doesn't matter because they come back in team
JDG have that thing that made SKT so incredible.
Yeah.
It was the ability, like you're saying, and you said it perfectly right there, Vedius. They know what you want to do, and then they mess you up because they read what you're going to do. It's that moment where SKT know that EDG are going to run down the mid lane, and so they stand in the bush and they just prepare the trap, and they like slam them with the Oriana ball. JDG do that shit to teams all the time because they outmind you. They're in
So
your
good
head.
luck,
Break
Rogue.
free.
I'm sorry. To the person who just said "hoomst" inquired in chat, you completely broke me. Hoomst inquired.
And can you keep it in? Can you keep it in?
Come on, Ender.
Rein it in. Rein it in, and hold it in.
Oh,
Come on.
jeez. All right.
That's
Where
why
were we?
Rogue is 100% getting out of this group.
Yeah, so as we've discussed, that's
As
why
we were
this is a
talking
free
about.
Whoa. We forgot to mention our 5th European representative, Paris Saint-Germain. What do we think about him?
The unicorns of love.
Yeah.
Sorry, no, UL is our 6th.
Yeah.
Listen, we're boosting a lot of teams this world. We've got like half of North America, half of...
So I seem to be in the minority when it comes to this group, but I have a very high opinion of Rogue overall, and I
have
think
a really high... Why do you say it like that? And people are like, Ender and Frosk think Rogue sucks.
no, because you
I
think
was
that. So
never
you
that
two.
way
So
thinking of
the
Rogue.
impression that I get is because you think that the top gap is so big between them and Fnatic that makes them like much worse than Fnatic. Whereas I think that they're actually like they're more consistent than Fnatic, they're more reliable than Fnatic, and like I'm actually willing to put them coming into this World Championship based on the evidence that we currently have.
That's
that they are
I would agree with that sentiment in the current form that both teams are playing. But if
Okay,
Fnatic
fair.
are playing their absolute best and Rogue are playing their absolute best, I think Fnatic's ceiling is higher.
I think that's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
I also don't
But that's
think
why-
they have
that's
to be
why I
playing at
also
their
think that-
absolute best. I just think they need to achieve like a lot of like, yeah. I don't think it's like if only on peak form. I just think that.
But see, like,
if
yeah,
both teams are
because then
playing
the
well.
also other issue I have with this is that we all agree that Fnatic is a pretty one-dimensional team in the sense that they need a single style that they can all align on. Whereas
Yes.
I think Rogue is actually a little bit more flexible. But then, of course, you could argue that Finn actually limits that flexibility because you can't just put Finn on pretty much anything and then shift the rest of the pieces around.
Yeah.
So
I feel like Rogue changed a lot of their champions, but like they have like pretty wide pools, but they don't really change how they play.
that's fair. I think
Like,
that's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's very fair. So, okay. So, obviously, we're not super optimistic. Let's put a percentage on it. Rogue's chances of actually getting out of this group. Okay. No. Change the percentage. What are the percentage chances that either Damwon or JDG have the Dade Award, the biggest Dade Award ever,
None.
and that they completely mentally break and one of those two teams collapse?
No. That won't happen. I think... Okay, here's the thing. You can have... Let's do the field. Either Damwon and JDG win Worlds, one of these two teams,
Wait,
or
you're not
the field. What do you pick?
the field, because TES is also in that. So,
But that basically means that you think that TES will win Worlds.
well, not necessarily, because I think that
Or G2.
If G2 has the best tournament of their entire lives, I could see them winning.
Oh,
as
so if
well.
they're
You
playing
would
at their
pick the
peak.
field.
If they're playing at the it was yeah, I would take
It was a
I
shit
would
attempt
take
at a joke, and I guess.
yeah, I got you. I would take Damwon or JDG.
So
Over
you
the
would take
field.
JDG or Damwon.
Yes.
I'm with Ender as well. I think one of these two teams will win.
Yeah. Now, the question I'd like to ask, because we care about Europe here, is how many games do Rogue win in this group not against PSG?
1.
3.
Wait.
Oh, I see. I
No,
was
yeah,
counting.
yeah,
Not
against
against PSG,
Damwon or
so-
JDG, how many 0 to 4 do they win?
1.
I think they win 1.
I think they 100% get 1.
Yeah. Fair.
What if, though,
2.
we get a 3-way tiebreaker?
How does that happen?
So
They both drop a
we
game to Rogue.
just said that Rogue could take 1 game, right?
Yeah. So
Well,
Rogue
so
What if we
beat-
get
they
into a
just split?
tiebreaker
If-
and then Rogue
If Rogue beats
time to run the
JDG,
lane
JDG
swap?
beats Damwon, and then Damwon beats Rogue.
Yo, because it goes to garbage tiebreaker rules, right? Where it's actually like game time.
I don't know what the
No,
rules
no,
are.
because it's always
incredibly
no
fair
first seed
and
is like
very well thought
Yeah,
out.
the
Thank you,
entire-
Riot.
yeah,
Tiebreaker rules.
No,
Mr.
but like we could do
Referee.
it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But we could do it though, because it goes like game time, and then the best game time moves on, and then the other two have to play.
Game time.
No,
bro.
that's
I
literally
think-
it's come down to that before. No,
I don't know if
I don't know.
what the
Because it goes
tiebreaker
head-to-head
rules are.
first.
I'm not gonna die on that sword, Ender. If you want to die on it, you
can
can.
climb
I
that
don't know.
hill.
I don't know what the tiebreaker rules are. I'm washing my hands clean of whatever it is Ender's saying.
I have no idea what's happening.
No, but by garbage, I didn't mean they were bad when I said garbage. I just meant like the LPL and LCK would not be happy with it. You know, they would think it's garbage.
Yes.
They would think it's garbage. We would think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's okay. Whatever.
Sorry, wait.
Anyway.
Trevor's calling me.
Anyway. So Rogue's chance is not looking good. Sorry, Rogue. Best of luck. I hope that Larson has the tournament of his life and he puts Showmaker in the ground. Excellent. Right. Group A, the easiest group in theory.
Do we have to talk about
discuss.
them?
Do we? I mean, okay. How many games?
Okay.
How many games are G2 Esports going to lose?
Sorry, Medic just confirmed in chat that it's in a three-way tie. It's game time. Medic just confirmed in chat.
In a three-way. Okay, well, we can deal with that when we come to it. Whatever. Group A, Ender. Let's focus in.
There's a high chance that G2 don't make it out of this group.
Shut up! That's not true. No, it's not.
That G2 don't make it out of this group. I would say that there's a higher chance that G2 don't make it out of this group than Rogue not making it out of there.
That is a lie. That is just a lie. You know that's a lie.
No. If any team's just gonna flip it would be that one.
Canceled.
No.
You've been canceled.
You've
actually just been canceled.
Yeah, you need to get that old Reddit username back. Okay, just that.
I wish I could delete your audio too, but I could only delete your camera for a second.
Wait, no, you can mute her on.
Yeah,
Discord.
it's true, but that's like a lot of clicking. I just can't even be bothered.
Listen, this is what's gonna happen. G2 will fumble draft.
Frosk is the imposter.
Because here's the thing, they always
Frosk
lose.
is the imposter. Put her off.
Wait, that's actually such a good content piece.
Listen to my theory. Eye contact right now with the camera.
Okay.
G2 will lose a game against Machi. That will tilt them off the face of the planet. They'll then immediately go into a game against SOFM. He will also tilt them off the face of the planet, and then it's over. TL will have a mentally broken and weakened G2, and they will be able to capitalize.
Okay, first things first. Have either of you VOD reviewed Machi yet?
No.
So actually.
But like as a hobby, right? Because we're not confirmed or anything.
Yeah. As a hobby.
It's Koala's team. It's Mission and Koala and Gemini. Basically, every single PK, Gemini, Mission, and Koala have all been to Worlds. Bruce is the only newcomer.
Wait, Bruce.
Wait, I want to cast Bruce.
Okay. So wait, I definitely am familiar. Didn't Mission play against G2 before?
Mission played for Hong Kong Attitude. At last year.
Yes.
But okay. If I remember correctly from my prep last year, so Mission played...
last year he was on G-Rex. Was
he on G-Rex previous? No, but he played for Hong Kong Attitude before because he was swapped. They were swapped. Yeah. So probably 2018 when G2 were in play-ins, probably played against HKA.
Oh, actually, I'm trolling because it says December 2018 to December 2019. So Mission must have been on the Hong Kong Attitudes for
last year. Last year. Yeah, they were there
last year.
Yeah, there might have been something about that. Why can't I remember the team?
Yeah, I can't remember because there was a team in MSI last year that they lost twice against. Was that Hong Kong Attitude or was that Buffalo? That was Buffalo.
That was Buffalo for sure.
That was Buffalo. Yeah, that was Buffalo. Anyway, the point that we were trying to get at was that we don't have a lot of information on Machi yet. Fine. But
I'm not scared.
You're
why
scared.
would we be scared?
Yeah.
It's just from what I've seen of Suning, like I'm really not concerned about them. Like I'm sure Suning can take a game off us. That's fine. I am not scared at all about Team Blue. Like G2 are gonna come out of this like easy peasy.
All right, Frost, give us a breakdown on how Suning approached the game. Because honestly, they've been a little difficult for me to read based on their playoff games. So what are your thoughts on them? What do you think of Suning?
Their AD carry is kind of new and upcoming. I'm not as high on him as some of the other LPL casters are. Like I said, I think like the biggest hot take is this is actually the weakest pool of ADCs that the LPL has ever sent. Not to say that they're trash, just to say that the LPL has sent god tier ADCs before.
Yeah, relative. This year relative to previous years, yeah.
Sword Art is, of course, I think still really strong. SOFM is kind of, for me, what this team lives and dies by, because then you have very inexperienced solo laners in Bin and Angel, who can be relatively inconsistent and volatile.
Sorry, we have a major announcement. LS has dropped the prophecy that Cloud9 will win Worlds. Thank you. Continue.
I'm really
LS
glad
is in chat. Wow, LS joins just as we're finished flaming all the LCK teams.
Yeah.
So what
I mean, he
timing?
can't
What
take it,
timing?
okay? He can't take the flame. It's all right.
SOFM,
yeah.
like, speaking of, like, they're super volatile. They're incredibly volatile. Their early game, you can almost never count on. Sometimes they can pop off, but other times it is an absolute train wreck. And then they have to pull back into team fight phase. That's all I got. That is, like, literally, like, the best read. Very volatile, very inconsistent. I think that their bot lane, for me, is actually, like, pretty decent and one of the most consistent pieces, but otherwise they're much more reliant on winning, like, the back half of games rather than the early portion of games.
So this is right. So this is SOFM Angel Sword Art roster.
Yep, with Bin and
Bin.
I can't pronounce the AD carry's
Bin
name.
rhymes with Finn, Ender. Remember that.
I literally I invented that joke, by the way.
Bin did not have the best series in playoffs. There was a bit of a top.
He has some good games.
Yeah, and that's why we kind of did. Bin and Finn are very similar players.
No, his name is Ben because he either puts you in the bin or he gets put in the bin. It's one or the other.
Yeah, like Finn.
Yeah, but we only see one half of that.
A 6 or a 9.
There we go. I'm back. Sorry, I've been getting blurred out. I don't know what's happening.
So yeah, I agree. I think that the LPL third seed is definitely a cut below what Top Esports and JDG are. Yeah. So I'm definitely, if JDG was in this group, I'd be like, okay, well, G2, second seed is still a solid, placement.
For those that haven't ever seen SOFM, here's my actual sales pitch, because I've been waiting for SOFM to make it to Worlds for a long time, because I think he's, like, one of the most exciting players. And Levi obviously, like, made his imprint, and, like, Levi is basically baby SOFM. Like, SOFM is the OG, if you will. He's just a super selfish jungler. He prioritizes himself first. He needs to get a lead, and then he puts it over to his other laners, which is what makes any team that he's on exceptionally volatile. Because if your jungler isn't participating in the game until he gets what he wants, you're not going to have a good time probably in your lane phase. Or if he starts popping off, because his mechanics are disgusting. He is so talented mechanically, it's just unfair to watch sometimes.
So it's the opposite of Yankos, is what you're telling me.
Complete opposite of Yankos.
The boomer hand's no good.
that brings a very interesting discussion up then, because obviously G2, well, they didn't have the cleanest finals, that's for sure, and obviously they've been under a bit of scrutiny recently, because people are debating how strong G2 actually are. They don't like they're in the same form that they were in last year. Perks has been struggling just a little bit. But right now in this group, it doesn't seem to me that there are any teams that would look to punish or upset some of the weaknesses that we have been seeing from G2. I think we can all agree with that, yeah?
They avoided an LCK team and they got Suning. It's like a win.
Yeah.
And they got TL. Yeah, like this is just like the best case scenario for G2. It has to be.
But one of the biggest concerns I think that we've all
had. This is the wild card group.
Like,
no,
it's not Frosk.
This is the wild card group.
I think G2 has a real shot of going like 5-1, 6-0 in this group. like there's a real chance, I think. They just, Vietnamese junglers have given them trouble in the past.
I actually am a little bit concerned for TL versus G2 because of the bot lane discrepancy. I think Core JJ and Tactical are strong, and Perks and Mickey, mostly Perks right now, are not in best form.
Sure. How concerned are you about the Jensen Caps matchup, Frosk?
I think mid lane, like, you can't stop Caps. You can try to control him, and I think as long as actually it's Broxa.
Yeah, but Broxa also has not had a great year.
Yeah, I agree, but I think it's more on Jinsen and Broxa just slowing down Capstan and isolating core JJ and Tactical. And you can also like roam core JJ. Like I think that there is an advantage for TL in the bot lane.
I agree with that. I don't think I'm convinced right now that like if bot lane's the only place where you have the advantage, like I just don't think bot lane changes the outcome of game right now. Same. I feel like it's actually like the only thing I'm really thinking of, especially when we're seeing these farming junglers, is like mid jungle dynamics and then like support roaming.
Because like remember that in the Fnatic series, it was split, right? It was Fnatic tried to play through bot and G2 played through top, and then there was the wonder gap.
I think core JJ will roam a lot, and
I have no doubt about that.
In a 1v3 scenario.
Sure, I mean that's fair. It's ironic though that core JJ is going to show up mid and Caps is going to be, hey, I'm top lane. And Impact's like, wait, that's illegal.
You mean Impact's like, I'm dead?
My legitimate concern for G2 in this tournament, why it's actually very difficult for me to put them as the favorites, is one of the things we said is, does Jankos play carry junglers? What G2 have come back to us and said is he does play carry junglers. The team just can't play around him when he plays carry junglers. The team has been very reliant on Jankos being the type of player that just provides for his laners, and then the laners run away with the game. Right now, the meta isn't about that. The meta is about Graves and Nidalee and Evelynn and all these kind of hyper carry jungle types. And like, unfortunately, I don't even in Jankos' career, he's never really been put in a position to do that. And I'm not trying to sit there and say that he can't do that, but his role in teams has always been to provide for his laners and get them to a point where they can carry. And obviously on G2, that works extremely well. When you have Wunder and Caps, who are two, in my opinion, two of the best players in the world coming from Europe, it makes sense to try and put them in positions where they can just succeed. But if the meta becomes less about solo laners and more about trying to make sure that your jungle can carry, I don't know if G2 can play that style or adapt to that style.
So a couple things on this is like, farming junglers have never stayed in the history of League. They've never stayed like meta in pro for a extended period of time. I feel like Nidalee has popped up and been like a mainstay for a while, but it hasn't been like a lot of farming champions that have stayed for like the course of an entire year or more than that. So it makes sense that Jankos in his career hasn't played that a ton. But I also think playing farming junglers, it's easy, man. Like you clear your camps, you just try, like you make sure you're back at your camps when they're respawning. Like it really does come down to whether or not the team can play around it. So I actually don't think this is like the hardest fix for G2 to come down to, because I think that if you have strong lanes on their own, as long as they respect the fact that, okay, now you're not having your jungler come mid at level 3 and level 4 and level 5, like you're not having those roams happen, you can still get an advantage and still get pressure for your jungler, you're going to be able to turn that into an advantage, and that's going to help out, or that's going to obviously help your jungler continue to farm and potentially take away enemy jungle camp. So I don't think it's difficult.
A farm style on jungle, then that just means that there's more of an opportunity to have your solo laners or your lanes in general skill checked. And that's like why if you have an underperforming piece, that you can actually be exploited like pretty hard on a farming jungle style if your jungler's not going to help kind of even out lane discrepancies.
So I will say the only exception to what my statement was earlier is the Karthus meta. That meta was
but that only stuck around for like half a split.
Sure, but it was also one of Jankos' best, right?
So my statement wasn't Jankos has not ever played these champions.
No,
it was
I
more
understand
addressing
that.
yours. It's never been something that I feel like G2 have had to learn and like stick to for a long period of time.
Right.
Is my point.
And my question is like, what do they then do if they have to for this tournament? Do they just keep with the River Shen and they keep with these champions like Set and Shen and they just avoid them and instead continue to play through their solo laners and just kind of defy the meta as they have done in the past?
So
or do you
I think if you're G2, you give your best players a bunch of agency champions like Zoe, because Zoe's the type of champion that you like hit someone once and then you can completely flip a game or decide a game. And that's what you look for. Like that is like the core of G2, is empowering their miracle players to perform miracles for them and not necessarily fitting perfectly to the meta. All of the champions that they've broken the meta with, things like Pyke, are all champions that give some of the best talent that Europe has and some of the best talent in the world the ability to just decide games in single moments.
Right.
Yeah. I think that what G2 should be doing is like this team has been together long enough. Like they don't need more practice. Like they should be like almost spending almost all of their scrim time like trying to like adapt and figure out new styles with like the Evelyn and stuff, and getting the team to be able to play those styles, because I'm very confident that in a best of 5, if they're playing scaling versus scaling and they're falling behind early, like they'll just be like, okay, we can quickly pivot it into like the set or something else for Yankos. Like I think they already have that style down, and now it's just making sure they have the other tools in their playbook, especially if, you know, the tournament meta, they figure out like, oh, we actually can't make a meaningful early impact on something like a set. You don't want to get 2015 LPL'd, you know?
Okay. So the ultimate question then is, do we believe that G2 will be able to return to form? Yes or no?
The assumption is yes, because the tape that we have given to make a prediction like that is when you give G2 time, when you put them in clutch positions or positions with high pressure, when you put them on the biggest stages, that these players step up and they make really drastic growth, like given these types of opportunities, which is why I have more faith in like a G2 returning to form than I do about, you know, like a Mad Lions or a Fnatic or even a Rogue, even though Rogue have started to show us tape, but not necessarily under the same spotlight as Worlds. Rogues have now shown us tape that they can do it in playoffs. Fnatic have done it where they do their week 2 turnaround in groups, as well as their playoff performance versus their regular split performance. But Fnatic are also still like relatively inconsistent when they come into finals, and then they get like 3-0'd multiple times. So that's why I'm like a little bit washed on them. And then I haven't seen it from Mad Lions. If anything, I've seen Mad Lions get into playoffs and like almost completely collapse every single time in a best of 5.
Yeah, I think the biggest like elephant in the room for G2 right now is like obviously talking about their bot lane and Perks in particular. And I'm actually very confident in Perks' ability to turn it around for Worlds.
Like
he's like such a hard work. Like no doubt, spring split, summer split, like might have been some coasting in there, but as soon as it's like crunch time for Worlds, like they're quarantined, this guy's gonna be playing like 16 hours a day. Like he's gonna be going so fucking hard. He's gonna be going very hard to make sure he can get back.
Well, also let's not forget, I think the pros will be going back to a stage.
Are they playing on an actual stage?
So I think so. You know, the LPL teams played on a stage during.
Yeah, they play in the studio.
Yeah. So I think the pros are doing the same thing. There's no audience, again, I would assume, but the like G2 on stage is just better. It always has been. Like it was Fnatic and G2 that were like, if they could play back on stage again, then they had confidence that they could play much better again. And so I think that having that will be an inherent buff to G2. But on top of that, like it's really interesting. A lot of people have told me like Perk should have been MVP in the years that like Trick got it or like Yankos got it or whatever, right? The reality is Perk's regular season has never been standout. Okay, that's a lie. That's false. That's a little too extreme.
I was literally just about
Sorry. I apologize. I take that back. I take that back.
Sounded a little biased there, Vedius.
Fnatic
Vedius strikes again.
I'm sorry. Heck W me all you want. I'm sorry.
Hit him.
What I meant was, right? Sorry. What I meant was
there's a flag on the play.
That's a joke for all the NA fans out there. They'll get it.
Is that Perks during regular season, very rarely does he have a whole split where he's just like the standout player, right? I think that where you truly get to see peak Perks is when he's in those positions where like the pressure's really on, when it's like do or die. When someone has to perform, he almost always steps up. And I think like if playoffs had MVPs, Perks would be winning a lot more of them. And like the G2 versus RNG is the best example of it, but he has so many others, like MSI Finals 2017 versus Faker. It's an easy one to forget, but like that man was playing a monster series, even though they lost it.
That was when Perks like wrote his name on the international stage in Faker's blood.
I was literally standing behind Faker.
That was like the remember the name.
I was literally standing behind Faker that series.
Oh, you watched him die? You watched him die to Perks 1v1? And so I think that like, but even last year, Perk showcased his Xayah and his Kai'Sa, and like,
I also don't think that his Ashe is that bad.
No, I think his Ashe is lit. I think his Ashe is really good. I think his Caitlyn is also very good, but it's
hear me out.
Yeah.
Caitlyn nerfs. What else
Yeah.
we got? Sorry.
Senna nerfs?
Senna nerfs. Vayne
hate
buffs.
Senna.
Vayne buffs. All right.
Wait,
all right.
Xayah got buffed too, right?
Xayah got buffed a while ago. Kaisa got buffed a while ago. Hey, Fnatic fans, you still around? Sivir got buffed. Rogue fans, yeah, Aphelios got buffed. Like, it is time. It is time, EU. It is time.
Rise up.
Rise.
Yeah, imagine that like
song.
first day of Worlds, G2, whenever they play like Machi, the first thing they bring out is Xayah Rakan. All of Europe's like, okay,
Yeah.
we're back in it. We're back in. Mickey Rakan, perk Xayah. Oh, baby. Oh, yes.
Oh.
All right, so I think that we're pretty optimistic overall about G2 in this group in particular. I think that when it comes to
I just want to say, if G2 is playing their best, they absolutely smashed this group. But if I had to pick any of the EU teams to just fall flat on their face, it would be G2.
So you're saying that you believe that Rogue is more likely to just die trying than G2 is to just fucking die, just literally shoot
How is that even a
Frosk is the
controversial opinion,
imposter!
Vedius? Do you not have eyes?
Frosk, they went 5-1 groups last
They're
year.
like,
went
let's go,
5-1.
Buffalo! Ah!
This is a 6-0 group. This is a 6-0 group.
This is
And if
6-0
G2 aren't 6-0ing or at least 5-1ing
When
with the troll game in
G2
there,
are running
we
it
have
down
no
in this
chance.
group, I'm just gonna look over at you, I'm gonna smile, and you're gonna be like, don't say
All
it.
right.
We will
Chat,
vote
if-
you out, Frosk. We will
Chat,
vote
if you want to
out.
vote the imposter out, if you could just
Yeah.
put a +1 in the chat, and we
Yeah,
could vote. Frosk
emergency
out.
meeting. Emergency
meeting. We gotta vote the imposter out. Okay, that's a lot
Oh
of
my
votes,
god, it's
Frosk.
just flying.
I think someone's going out to space in a second. All right. So that's gonna do it for our European conversation. We think Fnatic can make it out. We think G2 can make it out. We think it's going to be really difficult for Rogue and Mads. So we're kind of looking at 2 European teams in quarters. But maybe we get lucky. Maybe more miracles will happen. Maybe JDG, Damwon kill each other and Rogue just kind of sneak by them. We'll have to wait and see.
I think
any case-
it's semis at least.
You think Europe makes semis? Okay.
Yeah, I think
Cool.
it's
And-
semis at least.
Bold prediction from you, Ender. What are you saying?
I mean, the bowl, yeah, semis is the bowl. You know what? Honestly, Rogue are gonna win Worlds. Like,
Yeah.
hello? Yeah, hello? Is that even a question?
All right. That's going to be it for me and Frosk. I don't know if Ender's going to keep streaming. You can hit the record. Thank you for watching. If this is on YouTube, I don't know whose YouTube it's going to be on, but we're going to end the
Somebody's
recording
YouTube.
now. Hit the end record button, Ender.